All right. So apologize for the late start, but again, I don't know why, but I was just having trouble getting on. So, let's see. I am calling this meeting of the Sherborn Conservation Commission to order, October 14th. And I guess I'll start just by saying, is there anything that we need to add to the agenda that could not have been anticipated 48 hours in advance?
Neil, do we have
Yes.
to do a roll call?
For what?
I thought we had to do a roll call vote just to start the meeting. I thought
No.
we did that. Okay.
Yes, that's
I
what
mean,
you said. We do. That's what they said because it's a Zoom meeting. That's what they said at last night's meeting. So I move that we open the meeting.
Second,
Okay. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor, Cindy?
Aye.
Neil, I. Carol?
aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And is that everybody? Courtney. There you
Yeah.
are. Aye. All right, great. Okay, well, good. It's good to know that we need to do that. I was on that meeting, but there were certain things that I was not paying as close attention to as I could have. Okay. So in terms of the meeting agenda, there's nothing anybody needs to add?
Nope.
Okay, great. All right. Sorry, I'm just trying to get myself caught up here. Let me just open up my agenda. All right. And let's see. All right, so the first thing we've got on our agenda is the notice of intent for 55 Farm Road. Okay, let's see. I've got to open that meeting or that hearing. So again, bear with me. I'm a little bit late going here, but I got too many irons in the fire. Okay, so let's see. Do we have this thing in the Dropbox? That's the question.
Yes, the legal ad is in the Dropbox.
Wonderful. Let me get to that. Here we are. This new arrangement I don't like, but there we are. Okay. Notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission of the Town of Sherborn will hold a virtual public hearing at the Sherborn Town Hall, 19 Washington Street, Sherborn, Mass. At 7 p.m. on the 14th day of October 2021. The hearing is held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40, the General Laws as amended, the Wetland Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 17, to consider a proposal by Creative Land and Water Engineering, LLC, on behalf of Robert Murchison for the construction of a single-family home. Work will take place at 55 Farm Road, map 11, lot 60 in Sherborn, Massachusetts. Work may be performed within the 100-foot buffer zone. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will be given an opportunity to speak at this hearing. All right. So I guess, are we going to turn this over first to the applicant to present?
Yes, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, great. Deshang, do you want to start?
Yes, let's see if I can share my screen. So you can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so let me blow up. Okay, so what you see is lot number 2, that's the property line. And the property line go all around here. And this is the existing driveway to the existing house on the at 55. We are proposing a new house at this location with the driveway coming in off the existing driveway. If you're looking this green line, so this is a 50-foot no alteration zone, and this is 100-foot wetland buffer zone, and this is 125. So you can see pretty much the house and all the septic system so far away from the wetlands, and the entire, pretty much all the activities is on this, on the, let's see, on the east side of the existing driveway, except a minor modification, which was already consulted with Joyce, with the agent. The reason is the original approved NOI for the well service this house is at this location at Blow Up. It happened to be there's a tree there. So if we drill that, we have to cut that tree. And so if we move about 12 feet east, and we can avoid any tree cutting. And at the same time, we have to meet the Board of Health 20-foot setback to the driveway, and which will push in this driveway. The green one will be restored and removed, and then patching on the east and on the far side of the driveway, so to making this driveway in compliance with the new well location. So in the process, appreciated Joyce turned out a quick review comments, and this plan reflect her comments for the change of the plan is mainly for stormwater management. We originally thought it's just single family house, so that so we are exempted for stormwater management, but the recommendation and questions, we have definitely made this house development much better. The reason, if you look at it, so we made the house lot around the border of the existing driveway as slightly lower to create a long grass swale, which will, let me see if I blow up a little. So you can see we'll get all the driveways runoff pitch into the grass swale to treat the water before they enter a catch basin, which is going to be added. Right now, there's a 24-inch culvert, and we have been looking at the site. There's very minimal flow because the entire site have very good sandy, permeable soils. There's almost, you almost don't see much of a surface runoff at this point to go through that pipe, unless during very extreme conditions and a temporary. But when we raise with the fill, raising up the yard, so we are going to connect it to, with the sump, combine the catch basin. And so the surface water can still go into the culvert. And so another concern was during the construction, when we disturb the soils, how we're going to control the erosion. So it's mainly how to preventing the sediment going into the pipe and then going into the wetlands. So what we are proposing here now is to add in a sediment basin here, just near the road corner. And during construction, pretty much you can see all the runoff except the front part, which will have a mud trap for the entrance. So we'll come into this sediment basin. In the sediment basin, we're going to have a protected vertical riser with the perforations on the top so that the water goes through the basin. Let me see if I'll show you the detail. Okay, so this is a cross section. So any water coming in, it will will kind of fill up the basin. At the same time, they'll probably infiltrate into the ground. If that water is significant, from our experience, it will probably not quite significant. So even if they become some kind of, to a degree, so they fill it up, will be filtered through by the stone using the top perforated pipe and enter into the pipe and go into the new catch basin, which is equipped with a 4-foot sump. So that will be further set down. We will monitor the site. So there's another possibility is if we see anything, the water is it's getting even a little turbid, we can temporarily put a fill fabric over this existing 24-inch pipe to slow, so to protect, to filter any silt if anything get escaped. But we expecting not much runoff given all the good soils on site. And so we are proposing first we'll install the erosion control around the west side of the driveway because there's some traffic coming in using the existing driveway. And so we are going to install the mud trap, rip wrap, which is shown as a detailed. Yeah, so it's like in 2 to 3, or even a little bit bigger size of stones, so that then the mud is not going to escape in our side. And then we'll get in the sediment basin installed and get this catch basin installed. And so as soon as we install and grade this area, we will seed it right away. So hopefully to promote growth before we move on to the septic and the foundation construction. So at least for a while, depend on the time. If it's in the winter time, we probably have to use a winter rye and mulch this area. And so when the foundation hole open, until the roof get up, so that foundation hole is probably going to hold in some runoff and not going to cause any issue. And the same thing for the septic system. This is going to be flattened out with a sand fill. So this area is going to be as kind of runoff sink. So any water coming in will be trapped over there. So we will see what the condition. So the whole yard work, we can hold on until we get this done and get this swale and sedimentation area, control area, stabilized with the growth of vegetation. So then we can finish the rest of the yard. So for wrapping up, and then assume hopefully to get that phase quickly finished and hydroseeded to minimize the runoff and the erosion. So in general, that's what in short is the only area within 100 feet is this swales and the installation of the catch basin and the modification of the driveway, which is technically under the last order of conditions and with the field modification already requested by the applicant. So, and we think from a single family house perspective, oh yeah, and we also added a dry well, 3-chamber dry well to recharge a whole roof. So from the landscape, you can see around the limit of work, the whole backyard and side yard will be much flatter, flattened condition than the existing condition. So for long run, we believe it should have much less runoff compared, or at this in the equivalent condition, because the roof is recharged and the driveway is contained, and we also provide a good storage. We are going to keep this sediment basin, modifying it, seed it as a permanent infiltration basin. So I think that's pretty much what I have to say. So if there's any questions, or Joyce, you have anything I missed from to address your concern, so maybe that's the time we can discuss.
Why don't you talk about, talk about the erosion control barriers and your tree replacement?
Oh yeah, I missed the tree replacement. There's 5 trees to be cut, and we are replacing with a 2-inch caliber 5 trees, 2 red maples, 2 red oak, and 3 red maples in this area. Given the water is funneled to there, it will be more suitable with the red maple in this area. The erosion control barrier, originally we proposed a sill fence and straw wattles, and Joyce recommended changing that to 12-inch compost or chip here, replaced with 12-inch compost socks. We changed it. It's up to the commission if we want us to change it back, because with so much of erosion control features, sediment basin put in, I think this the straw wattles is easier to install in my view, but and to maintain. But most of the things would be contained on the east side of it with all the swale pre-constructed and the sediment basin installed. So we did put on the plan with all. So on this side, on the east side, we have erosion control barrier, and on the west side we have it. So it's really through the whole front construction side. So, and given right now there's probably not going to any runoff coming until we filled up here at the beginning, except that this section, which is still higher than the sediment basin. So we are not expecting much of anything coming to this toward farm road. So the farm road should be able to keep very clean. And the only thing coming would be coming from the entrance, which is quite a distance. It's over 100 feet away. And plus we're already going to install the trap rock mud trap here. And so we'll keep it as like a sub base for the new driveway. So Joyce, is that covered?
So Desheng did address the comments that I had. My concern is that directly across from the driveway, there's a little swale, a scupper in the driveway. So anything coming off the driveway would be directed directly towards the wetlands. So I do think the erosion control that we've got on both sides is important, and that the driveway be swept. There are notes, and we'll put it in the conditions too, that the driveway needs to be and the street need to be swept daily or as needed, so that we can keep any debris on the driveway from going across the driveway and into the wetlands. I like the idea of the settling basin that he put in there. That is, while it is a extra for a single family home, I think it's warranted for this, again, because of the direct conduit between the project on one side of the driveway to the wetland swale, to the swale that goes right to the wetlands on the opposite side of the driveway. He did also add onto the plan that I asked for a volume of material that will be brought in for fill, and a table of activities in the buffer zone. That's also been added to the plan.
Right, yeah, disturbance area, the table breaking down. So between the different area of the buffer zone, yeah, we provided the volume cut and fill analysis at each elevation. So total, we are going to have a roughly 500 yards of fill need to be brought in.
Michael, go ahead.
So I guess Joyce, so you're okay with the sizing and the sort of calculations about the that basically whatever calculations were done for the stormwater management are reasonable.
I believe they are reasonable for the single family dwelling, yes.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to confirm that. Then my list of some things are that the fill, given that there's fill, that one of the conditions will be meeting the wetland regulations that we have about fill. Section 5.3, I believe it is, will be part of the conditioning, as well as about stumps and stuff. There's fill and stumps in the regulations that will be part of the conditions in terms of the quality of the fill. I think you've seen that before, Shang. So that would be part of the conditioning on the fill that's being brought in. Then what's that? Oh, I thought somebody said something. And I guess we'll just have, I see that there's the maintenance of the outfall in terms of the riprap there. It's outside the 50, and it'll just, I guess we'll have a condition to just check that outlet for sedimentation and any erosion there. So that'll be a condition that we would I would think we would want. And I think, and you already have it, and that including something like maybe an annual report on that condition, or so that we just know that it's being monitored, that there's no problems coming out there, even though it seems very unlikely given the volumes. Then the remaining issue I have is more on the mitigation for the basically you're creating about, and I can't tell that number of 1,370 square feet, whether that's the area of the new driveway, I'm presuming. And basically, what I'm curious about is in terms of mitigate, I mean, you're cutting trees and you're substituting trees, albeit fairly small, but what I would like to know is about, in terms of mitigation, the areas that are in the outer buffer zone that are below the driveway or south of it, where that basically goes towards the catchment. There's that sort of pie-shaped area below there that's in the, that'll have a bit of work there. And then a little bit above, what work will be done and whether the invasives, I guess there was some talk about cleaning up invasives, whether those two areas that are in our jurisdiction, in the outer buffer zone, above the driveway, is there going to be any work? I guess I'll start with, is there going to be any work north of the driveway? Or whether that's an area that could be, that will be maintained as a natural buffer, as well as the area south of there. I could see it being improved as mitigation. That area south for sure has a lot of invasives down towards where the catch basin is, that whole area could be cleaned up and some native plantings being done there as part of mitigation for the driveway.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, yeah, here's lots of bittersweet. So I don't recall there's much of here. You say the north of that?
No, I'm just wondering, even, they're two very different areas. I'm wondering whether any work will be done north of the driveway or whether that area in our jurisdiction will remain native buffer, that you're not planning any landscaping north of the, we'll start with the north part, whether you're planning any landscaping at all in the buffer zone north of the driveway, or that will remain native buffer zone as it is today. Natural.
There will be like a swale. Are you talking about this area?
Are you talking about to the left of the driveway, Michael, as we're looking at it? Or
No,
the
I'm talking
right?
about the new driveway.
To
I'm
the
talking about the
right.
new driveway. I'm talking about the new
Oh,
driveway.
north of the new driveway. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah,
I have
which
no
is-
issues with the existing driveway and the change that's being made. I mean, they have to do that, and that cancels out. And I don't have
Right.
any problem with the well change there. It's just a matter of, I'm just trying to deal now with, for the new driveway, I'm just looking at the fact that it's,
Yeah, here is going to be have 2 trees planted, and so Bob, you can chip it in to see what you think. So we haven't really developed exactly what is going to be planted, but I would assume he's going to have some ground cover. So, but the worst will be a lawn, so definitely will be seeded after the trees planted. And so it will be lawn or have some kind of flowering beds.
well, that's what I'm trying to get at, that it's
Right.
natural buffer now, and I'm trying to see whether in exchange for the driveway, which is creating impervious surface and taking away of natural buffer now, whether that area there could remain natural buffer zone as opposed to being a landscaped turfed area, that would be, since it's in jurisdiction and it's a good buffer zone now, whether that kind of landscaping can be avoided as part of mitigation for the new driveway. And similarly, that area south. I'm just trying to come up.
Yeah, we can keep like in natural with the trees planted. So the things here, I would think, say, if we're doing New England wildflower seed mix and keep some kind of a natural looking. I don't know, Bob, what you think? I cannot hear you. I think it turned off. Bob, we cannot hear you. can you guys hear Bob?
No, I don't hear him either.
No.
What does it seem? Does it look like his mic? I can't see him, his picture.
No, he's not muted from our perspective.
Does he look
Hey,
like?
Shane. Oh, Neil, can I comment on
Please,
something?
please, go ahead.
Out? Yeah, what I would suggest would be not just a native seed mix, but really actively planting this. I know on the site visit, Bob mentioned the idea of native ground cover, which we talked about things like hay-scented fern. There's lots of native plants that can grow fairly thickly, because my feeling is if you just landscape it in any way as grass, people start mowing it. Whereas if it's actively landscaped as kind of a combination of shrubs and perennials and ferns and things like that, then if it looks nice, people will leave it alone. So that would be my preference too, because it would provide some cover to the critters that come across the driveway. And, you know, that area down like to the south of the new driveway will be quite wet. And so that may even become, you know, because there's a catch basin. So that might even be a really nice habitat. There's the swale and then the catch basin.
Right, this will be definitely natural, maintained. I think this is an area we do have a mitigation planting. I think it's a good idea, leave it there since it's upland area. And haze and the fern definitely will survive, either breaking fern or haze and the fern mix to be planted there. It would be good. Haze and the fern, if it can be established, it definitely will provide a very dense ground cover.
Yeah.
So I don't see any issue. So
I guess in
we
terms of
cannot
whether
hear Bob. Bob is looking for probably for recommendation, but
Right.
Yeah.
So just to be mindful of the time, I didn't think we'd get all the way through this today anyway, but we are sort of out of time for the half hour that we've allotted for this.
Well,
So I think it probably makes most sense to continue this until our
I
next
think we-
meeting.
I think since we started a little later and I'd like to get a little more closure, even though there's a 7:30. And I think in terms
excuse
of
me.
just the next step, I think we're fairly.
Okay, then let's take a minute or two to do that for sure, and then
Because I think that getting some specifics from the applicant on exactly what will be done in the areas north and south of the new driveway.
yes,
We're in the area there that would with the goal of a landscaping plan that would be that would keep it as some sort of native natural buffer zone. And any improvement needed in terms of removing the invasives in that area, since there'll be a lot of work being done south, but creating an area that basically would be relatively unmanaged and left more natural, and getting a landscaping plan is the last part I have to basically seeing that there's a reasonable mitigation for the driveway.
sure. Okay,
Whether they
So-
agree with that for that, because that way we could wrap it up quickly with that plan once we see that. And I don't think there's too many other issues besides some fairly standard conditioning.
I
Carol?
do have the one, and I can bring it up quickly, but demarcation along the driveway at the 50 or as close to 50 foot as possible. But we, have talked about demarcation, and I'd like to continue that. It's, education. Yeah, and I realize the 50 runs right through the middle of the driveway, but maybe to the left side of the driveway, but kind of along the 50, but it's not exactly along the 50 because it's to the left of the driveway, but it's out of the way
Well, the
Right.
part, yeah,
of
So-
the driveway. And we talked about this earlier, and I wanted to do it when the well came up, and I was told to wait for this.
yes,
So
no.
now I'm coming forward with it.
It's- Yeah, and it's point taken, and I guess what I would say is, this is all well and good, and we did start a few minutes late, and it's now a few minutes past when we were supposed to wrap up, and we already wedged this hearing into an already packed agenda, and I think we're going to have to continue it. I don't see, it doesn't sound like I've heard anything from Cindy, Carol, Michael, or myself or anybody else that's sort of a showstopper here in terms of the thing, but getting the landscaping down, getting where the markers go, which is obviously quick, that's stuff that we can do, but I think we're going to have to do it at our next meeting.
okay, so if we may, I may quickly ask So I can see we can put a one marker here. And so this is a new well, so it's a straight line. We can put one here, maybe one at the new edge of our driveway, because so this is going to be removed. So probably put in somewhere here. And then
I
one
think
on
I'm
this
going to
side.
interrupt you, Deshane, because I think I'd rather we just resolve it at the next meeting, because I have some other views about, because I'm not tied to the actual 50 foot, and I think we could find some useful places quite easily when we
Okay.
wrap it up.
Yeah,
So
Um,
in that
if
case,
if you can mark it the plan or pass on through Joyce
Sure.
or
Right.
Elizabeth to us, and when we
I
provide
think
the planting
think
plan,
that
we can incorporate into it.
And
Right.
I think whatever we can pass along to Joyce in terms of feedback that is not
Right.
considered deliberation or anything to do with open meeting law violations, we will do that for sure, because we'd like to be hitting the ground running as much as you on the next meeting. So we will definitely do that. All right, so I move that we continue this.
One quick request, we have a septic system application with the Border House. They need conservation's approval for them to do the, if you see it, the whole septic system is totally outside of 100 foot, 125 foot buffer zone. I requested Joyce, but she said she need the commission to give like an approval, like an administrative approval that, so the
No,
septic
we-
system is not in the
No, that's not what she
jurisdiction.
said. Joyce,
No, we're just saying you're gonna have to wait until we issue the notice of, the order of conditions, for that. I said that we couldn't separate them.
all right, I'm gonna just continue with my motion. I move that we continue this hearing till, Elizabeth, are we on the 28th?
We are on the 28th and we're going to put this hearing at 8:10.
Okay, to the 28th at 8:10 p.m.
Second,
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Does that work for the applicant being there?
Okay.
28.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, let's see. Courtney,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Carol,
I,
Michael,
Aye.
Neil, I. All right, the motion carries. We will see you on the 28th. Thank you. Sorry we're so short on time this evening.
No, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, and we now have a request for determination for 34 South Main Street. Joyce, I was looking in the Dropbox and I didn't see anything necessarily a write-up from you. Have you had a chance to look at what's being presented?
Yes, and we talked about it briefly in discussion at the last meeting. My conditions would be, yes, I did look at it, would be to access the project from the opposite side of the house. They're redoing the two existing structures that are sitting on the ground right now. They're partly in the 100-foot buffer zone. There's a deliberate or a very clean retaining wall between the structures and the wetlands, or the lawn below the wetlands towards the, between the wetlands and the two sheds. But we just wanted to be clear that no activity would come up the existing driveway, that it would come from the far side of the house. We talked about, because that's kind of where you were driving now, across the lawn, so that you're not bringing construction material up the existing driveway, up the stairs on that wetland side, on the driveway spur that was just constructed, and coming around from the other side of the house.
Okay,
The applicants are looking concerned. Can you, I mean, that's one of the conversations that we've had. I think I met on site, I've spoken with the owner, so is that a concern for you, what, coming from the opposite side of the house rather than coming straight up the driveway?
The only concern coming from the other side of the house is we have limited access to come up that way because of the neighbor's property line.
Well, you've been driving up that, getting to the sheds now.
So I did drive. I put my truck up there. I had to when they were doing the driveway, and I did that with permission from him to put the truck up there. I can ask him if we can. We had it when we did the addition on the house. We had a storage container there. It was sitting on his property. And I can ask them to ensure that we can do that.
Yeah,
All
it-
right,
it's
so
a little
I,
delicate for us, you know, but I mean,
this was, so I approached this project, Mr. Chairman, because I had had a conversation with the homeowner on site and that all access was coming away from the end of the wetlands. If it's changing and coming up the driveway, then I mean, this was,
I just
we were
had-
pretty clear about how we were gonna get, you were gonna get to this, so to change that now, I'm not sure, we'd have to talk about how we're gonna stop erosion and where you're doing stockpiling and because you can't, if you're accessing it from the driveway, you have to go up 3 steps and a retaining wall to get to your structure. How are you, where are you gonna stockpile things? You can't easily,
Everything's going to be stockpiled up on. I'm guessing we'll have it stockpiled up on the raised area of our property in the back, directly behind our house. We're not trying to have contractors working in the driveway side. We're parking there. I'm just saying that it's possible that a contractor's going to walk up those stairs. Like we can't avoid that. That is a driveway.
So, Joyce, if I can ask, I just put the drawing of the property there. Is it the shed in the back at the top?
it's the whole, yes, that whole shed. In fact, if I could, I'm gonna pull up the pictures that I took of this and that might,
Sure. Are they in the Dropbox or you have them on your machine?
oh, I'm gonna have to share my,
All right, I'll stop sharing and I'll let you share.
No one's going to be stockpiling anything there.
no, I'm sorry, I'm waiting for my computer there. So as you can see, coming up the driveway here, there's the retaining wall at the end, the shed is in the back.
Yep.
And I mean, it's
may I say something? I mean, what exactly is your concern? I mean, we have the trucks, there may be some cement rolling thing. I mean, we will not be putting anything beyond. If you go back to the driveway, please.
so I'm more concerned about,
So-
Nothing will be there, right, obviously, because we know it's conservation area. We're not gonna, we'll be putting a dumpster there, obviously, we're not crazy, but I'm just thinking trucks and, you know, I mean, my car needs to be over there somewhere. And, or, you know, I mean, we'll have maybe to negotiate putting a dumpster on the other side,
Yeah.
you know, with our neighbors, as we did when the house was first remodeled. But I mean, personally, I really don't see an issue with, I mean, I would not allow construction people to put stuff on those planter areas, which I understand is part of the conservation area.
So I think the issue that Joyce is raising is that it sounds like, and Joyce, forgive me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you already had a conversation about how construction equipment and work would be accessing that shed area, and then it would be around the other side of the house. And that if that's not the case and that's a change, I don't think Joyce is saying absolutely not. What she's saying is, I haven't had an opportunity to think about the best way to protect the jurisdictional areas, given the fact that this is not what I expected to be happening. Is that, in a
that's
nutshell, Joyce?
exactly, exactly.
And I'd like to say that I was the one you had the conversation with, and yeah, we're going to do the best we can to keep all the construction on the other side. Yeah.
Well,
But
but
if-
that,
but
sorry,
if
a reassurance that you can do the best you can is not the same as you have to. You have to. Like, so if the understanding is that construction access will be from the other side of the house, then that's where it has to come from. It's not a best effort. It's not a should. It's a must.
Okay,
Okay, so just.
okay, I'll talk to
yeah.
the neighbor. That's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't
Ju-
realize it
yeah,
was.
just to clarify, so trucks should be
There's
going
no trucks going over
pulling
there.
into the lawn.
No trucks. Well, they'll park across the street in the church lot. It's
Okay.
not a driveway. There's a lawn. We have a septic system in the front of the house.
Yeah, we can't do that over
And
there, yeah.
we'll put a dumpster that needs to be on the side of the house, and they can park across the street if they
Okay,
have to,
okay.
or on the side of the road along the walkway.
Okay.
Okay, so where would the dumpster go up where you've got your truck parked beside the shed?
Dumpster will go up on that
Yeah.
side of the property.
Yeah, where it was when we
Correct.
remodeled the home. I mean, because we have also the issue with the septic, right? Because
Right.
it's in front of the house and a little bit that way. So, I mean, there's
Yeah.
all these things with the Board of Health and.
No, I understand. So
I get a little
so-
concerned when I hear all this stuff, but.
with the dumpster, if the dumpster's not gonna be in your driveway over here, but it's up where you park your truck?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the picture will be on that side.
We just.
Okay, so that takes care of, I mean, if you can do all of the debris from
All
over
of it
there.
will be on that
It's
side.
not
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
it's not that workers can't park in the driveway and then walk up and down. It's
Okay.
bringing all the debris and all
Oh,
of
no,
that
no,
materials
everything
that
will
way.
be, yeah, everything will,
Okay.
any kind of payload, materials, building supplies will all go on that side, 100%.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, even now I'm a little more relieved because I thought they could not even pull the truck out on the driveway, but now, yeah, the dumpster would have to be that way anyways. We knew that.
okay, so if we made a statement like, a dumpster storage and construction access would be from the far side of the driveway,
Yep,
that's something you can live with?
yep,
Absolutely.
100%.
All right, and then we would add, you've got erosion control right now that would stay in place, but if we added another just up along the top, around the edge here,
Yep.
and just put one extra erosion control there, I think that answers my concerns, Neil.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll make sure.
I have a quick question. Mr. and Mrs. Williams, will the shed have any kind of foundation, or will it be on gravel, or what will it be on?
Yeah, well, we have to figure that out because once we demolish, this is a structure. Both structures are, I think I found out, dated from 1975. So there's no way to find out what's under it until we demolish it. But if you look at the setback plan, we're not going anywhere to the sides, further to the sides, in terms of.
So it's on the same footprint?
Same, there'll be a little bit of addition on the far
On
side
this
there,
side?
yeah,
Can it-
to make it
All right.
geometric.
Yeah.
The foundation, when we talked to the builder, it was either going to be some kind of platform or potentially like a 3-inch slab. If
Okay,
needed.
so when we spoke, you were working on the same structure that was there. It sounds like you've had more opportunity to talk to your builder since you and I have spoken.
We're
And
not
it sounds
sure.
like you may have to excavate for the foundation.
We don't know.
Okay,
We're hoping
well,
not.
if you're adding a corner to this, you're gonna have to put something down there
Correct.
Right.
so there will be, so again, any machinery would have to come from the opposite side.
Everything's gonna come from the other side.
Okay,
Yes.
There's no
And-
way it can go up anyway.
okay,
There's no way any vehicles or machinery can get to the structure
So
other
below.
than the other side of the house.
Joyce, I'm looking at again, at the diagram or the site plan or whatever you want to call it. And it looks like, in that picture you were just showing, it did look like the side closest to the wetland, part of the building, part of that shed is in the 100-foot buffer. It's sort of on the outside of that. Is that correct?
correct.
Yes.
Okay. And so my only question is, if they're going to be doing some excavation, changing the foundation of it, is that something we need to condition somehow?
I would add a condition that says no stockpiling of material within the 100-foot buffer zone.
Do we need any kind of erosion control if they're going to be digging it out within the buffer?
Yeah, we just talked about adding it on the wetland side, wrapping around the back of the shed.
Okay,
That would be a condition also.
okay. Other commission concerns, questions?
Cindy, you wanted to talk about markers on this one?
Sure, we can talk about markers. Didn't we, with the driveway though, have, this applicant put markers in? I thought we talked about markers when they came to us for the driveway, did we not?
So we did, and we talked about putting them on the back side of that spur. I'm not sure that came across clearly in translation. Because we were
I
gonna
see,
put-
so then if it did not, then I would like to make it, clear, because that is something that we have been doing as a commission to help with the education, of everyone, all people, is to put, demarcation. I think when we talked about this property before, it was they were gonna put in a rock wall or a small, lower rock retaining wall along the edge of that driveway, and they thought that that might be a good place to put demarcation right along there. I think there was another spot sort of up as you went towards the shed. I'm kind of going at a diagonal here from the what would be the rock retaining wall. There was another spot along sort of that line, that invisible line as you went to the shed, another demarcation marker there. Just I know we've talked about different wording. Something to the effect, I don't know, Elizabeth, you might have it in the office, something to the effect of, maybe it wasn't jurisdictional area, but protected area, do not disturb, something like that. And then I think we also had, I think we had like 3 markers, if I'm remembering correctly. There was another marker to the east, from the one on the rock wall. I don't know, is that rock wall even there?
Yes, there's a small rock wall, and there are 2 demarcation markers in place, which I believe when Joyce and I talked, she said we actually made them bigger than they need to be.
Oh, huh.
And they could have been pushed back further. So I haven't had them moved.
They're there. They're just sitting there.
But we can add
Right. I think, well, they could be pushed back, but I think we had them on the rock wall because it seemed like a nice spot
No,
for them
the-
to be.
the rock- Yeah, the rock wall was perfect, but there's one that's now sitting in their garden right near the patio. And,
Oh,
and that didn't seem like it was,
a good spot.
well, it seemed like it was, well, not a great spot. But if you had 3 before, if you had a total of 4, you'd be able to add 1 more between, at the edge of the lawn between the shed and the wetlands, at the edge of the lawn beside the shed.
Sure. Do you have a suggestion for those? Like you're saying that the one in the garden is kind of not the best spot. Do you have a suggestion where the one in the garden should go?
Maybe along the edge of the lawn. So there's the shed, there's like the boulder wall, and then there's a bit of a rough lawn that goes to at the edge of the woods. The edge of the woods is approximately the 50 foot. So if they put 2 markers down along the edge of the lawn there, and then the 2 that you talked about at the end of the stone wall at the spur, I think that would be more than enough.
Great. That sounds good to me. How does that sound to the applicant?
That's fine. Are you saying, well, the ones on the shed side? Are you saying below that retaining wall behind?
Can we look at the picture again? It might
Or
be
up-
easier for us
up-
to visualize.
Hold on.
Where exactly you want us to do it.
Or up on it? Because it's raised, right? It's like a plateau, sort of.
So I'm not talking here. I'm talking
I can't see the
sort of projecting your spur out along the edge where this lawn area here meets
Yeah.
the woods.
Okay, sure. Put a
I don't know, so more down like right in here,
okay,
because
Yeah.
that's about 50 feet away in this area here.
got it. Yeah, we can put a couple in there. I
So
mean,
it'd be like 4
we can make
altogether?
some good markers. It's fine.
If you just put 2 in this area and then 2 at the end of the spur like we had proposed.
Okay. Yeah, Tim can do that when he does the push.
Joyce, are you writing that into the conditions?
Yes.
Ah, thank you.
Are there other conditions we want to add?
So I have dumpster and construction access from the far side of the house, erosion control between the shed and the retaining wall, no stockpiling within the 100-foot buffer zone, 4 markers to be added. In addition to what was already proposed, the 2 that were proposed.
So 4 more.
Okay.
Yeah, you should.
Anything else that people want to add condition-wise?
No, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Well, so I move that we approve this as an RDA with a -3, which means we're not confirming the wetland line, and with the conditions set forth by Joyce.
Second,
Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, Neil, aye. Michael,
aye.
Cindy? Cindy?
Sorry, I was having trouble with mute button.
It's okay. Carol?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries.
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so, so much.
All right.
Will we get an email?
Yeah, a written, because I wrote it down, but I don't know if I wrote it correctly, so. About the
Oh.
conditions and everything.
I'll write it up and give it to Elizabeth and she will issue it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
so very much.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. We have a couple minutes before we're going to start our next hearing. So is there anything, I guess I'm looking at discussion items. Is there anything that anybody is here for or thinks we can cover in 2 minutes? I can certainly give an agent position update, but if there's anything else we can do quickly. All right. I don't know, give an agent position update. So, well, I'll just, anyway, I'm working with David Williams to finalize an offer letter for Anna Meyer. So, I'm hoping to have that out tomorrow.
Good. Thanks for the work.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's that. We've still got a minute and a half or so. Let's see, the warrant, I can read that. Where is that thing? Is that in here, Elizabeth?
It is not, we don't have one
Oh, it's just on the agenda. Okay.
on the agenda.
Let's see, I don't have any poetry tonight. My apologies. Do we have any minutes that we need to do?
I have one set that I'm prepared to do, but I think it's,
More time consuming?
yeah, I think we should just consider it basically 8 o'clock.
I agree. I've stalled for 60 seconds here. Let's do it. All right, I'm going to reopen the hearing into Coolidge Crossing. So welcome everybody who's here for that. And let's see, obviously it's been a few weeks and unfortunately our scheduling was such that we had a little bit more of a gap between the 2 sessions of this hearing than maybe we would have wanted, but it looks like from some of the material that the applicant submitted that you were working with BSC on things like wildlife crossings and that kind of thing. But I think it might make some sense for us to kind of recap where we are and what we're going to try to accomplish this evening. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So I'm going to freely admit that I'm not 100% clear on where we left it off because I don't remember, other than the fact that we were going to talk more about wildlife crossing, we were going to have landscape management plan and some other stuff. So I don't know, maybe Matt Byrne, I don't know if you're prepared maybe to sort of talk about where you think stand where you think things stand?
Sure, happy to.
Great, thank
Good,
you.
yeah, good to see you folks. Again, for the record, Matt Byrne, senior ecologist with BSC Group, peer review consultant for the Sherborn Conservation Commission. So just before the last meeting, Matt Leitner and I had a good discussion about the work that he had been doing on understanding the issues surrounding wildlife crossings. I think they came a long way in their nuanced understanding of how those work and how they can be successful. And at the last meeting, we went through in pretty good detail some changes to the proposal so that if I have the directions correct, the southernmost crossing is much revised, larger, has a grading system, and is really pretty robust and has new design for entry and exit that should be more effective in sort of bringing animals that are trying to move across the landscape into that feature. So I think they really did a great job of understanding the problem and coming up with some solutions that are going to work much better than the original proposal. They've eliminated the northernmost of the two, but done some curbing. We talked about Cape Cod berms and those curbings there, and at the exit point, to the emergency exit to the other end of the property, are going to use Cape Cod berms to facilitate movement of animals across the landscape. So I think that's all very good. We talked about some revised plantings, particularly around the mouth of both sides of the wildlife crossing itself. In the interim, since that meeting, just last week, I think it was, a whole bunch of documents came in that were very good to have on hand. The buffer zone report from Deshang Wang, which I think is very helpful and helps establish kind of the existing conditions, and will help rationalize and justify the eventual conditioning for this project. So that's very good to have on record. Revised plan set was received. The stormwater operation and management plan, landscape operation and management plan, and also a good collection of proposed special conditions from the applicant, which is a really good starting point. And I think that, I've gone through all these documents. I have a variety of comments that I'm happy to share or talk through with folks. Mr. Lesser tonight provided a fairly lengthy email with a number of ideas for special conditions. So I think we've got a lot of material to work with for making some good progress on the project.
So I think then it seems to me that we've probably got enough fodder to, like, I'd like to hash out anything that's still sort of undecided. And if we're going to take basically the documents that the applicant provided and Matt that you've reviewed, and if we can dovetail that with the lists that Michael generated in that email a little before the meeting, it feels like what could come out the other side of that is sort of the groundwork for the special conditions that, Matt, you're sort of charged with, drafting and having the commission review. Before we get into that, though, we do have the one other element which we sort of has been up in the air, which is the stormwater review. Now, at the last meeting, we did not have a proposal from BSC. We have one now. We do also have the Tetra Tech one. And I think what I'd like to try to do a little bit is and I apologize for not having dug more into this in between the meetings, but it feels like for both proposals, they came in actually more expensive than the original stormwater review, which I thought was more comprehensive than what we had scoped. And so I think it might make some sense sort of as a preliminary step to try to reduce that scope so that at least we could go back to both BSC and Tetra Tech and see if they can come up with another number, because I think BSC came in at around 3,100 and Tetra Tech was over 4,000, and it seems just out of keeping with what we were trying to accomplish. Does that seem like a reasonable thing to try to do? Yeah, Mr. McDowell.
Through the chair, I thought a couple of meetings ago, we agreed we were not going to continue review the stormwater, but in fact, you were either going to engage Tetra Tech or BSC to help you on drafting the conditions. I thought we
Correct.
all agreed that the stormwater was a settled issue.
Yes, and sorry, when I used stormwater review, perhaps that's a, sort of an overly broad characterization. No, it's exactly what you said. We wanted help drafting any kind of conditions around the stormwater system that are specifically related to wetland issues. And so that's still the intent, and that really was the intent of sort of our RFP, or a sort of a description of what the work was that we wanted, but it seems like either we were overly broad in soliciting that those proposals, or they were overly broad in their interpretation. And that's the part that that we have not had a chance as a commission to go back and clarify with them. And that's just something that we have to follow up on.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Please.
It's Todd McDowell. I know we submitted a check. Perhaps, we just engaged one of the two firms to work on an hourly basis with that number not to exceed that on drafting the conditions. As perhaps we work through this with them, they'll realize their required time is a lot less than they anticipated.
So one thing I would say is are you talking about the additional funds that you recently deposited?
Yes.
Because I think that was for time that Matt Byrne was going to dedicate not toward any kind of conditioning around stormwater. So I still think it's a separate thing. I mean, if we want, but the spirit of what you're saying, I'm in agreement with. Like, let's try to get that moving. I don't want to ask for a blank check from you guys, before we understand. I think we're all in agreement on what we want them to do. And Michael and I were chatting just a little bit before this meeting, like, is there a way to kind of put a dollar amount on it and say, not, maybe we say what you're suggesting, Mr. McDowell, that, we engage you on an hourly basis not to exceed a certain amount, that kind of thing. I suppose that's an approach we could take.
I think that's a fine approach, but I think the other thing that I'm concerned about, we've spent over 6 weeks now, yet have not made a determination whether using Tetra Tech or BSC. Now, I know the commission would prefer to use BSC. So I think rather than dancing on this issue any further and going back and forth and wasting another month, I think if you want to go with BSC, you should just do so. At the end of the day, it's going to be your call anyway. So
right.
I don't know why we're going back and forth on something that you're going to make the judgment on anyway.
Well,
so go ahead.
No, and I understand, and I appreciate your willingness to kind of give us the latitude. I do believe that we would prefer to work with BSC just because of we've already have, and we like what we're seeing so far. And not to say anything, it's not a knock on Tetra Tech. We haven't worked with them at all. But other than
Matt's been involved with a number of meetings, and he's very knowledgeable, and I feel comfortable that Matt working with the commission and hopefully with Matt Leidner and Stephanie. My only concern is that we don't micromanage to such a degree the conditions that it's just not achievable.
Right. So let's do this. If you're willing to trust us and we're willing to trust you, I think we can move along the lines of using them on an hourly basis. We'll go back to them. We'll sort of reinforce what the scope is and what we're looking for. And if to BSC, that is, and if they come back and say, well, we can't do it, or there's some other, we'll reach out to you sort of outside the hearing or the meeting process and try to just figure out, just because it really is a procedural thing more than it is anything else. I don't think it's something we need to do in an open hearing.
I agree. And if you just send us an email explaining what you want to do, and we'll just quickly acknowledge it.
Excellent. All right. That's a great resolution. Thank you for that. Okay. In that case, why don't we return to maybe where, Matt Byrne, you had said that you have reviewed the materials that the applicant submitted and you have some comments, suggestions. Do you want to start there?
That would be fine. Sure. I did not have any comments really with the buffer zone report. I felt it was good and effective at doing what it needed to do. Given the fact that that you're going to get actually an engineer to weigh in on stormwater operation management. Let's just not even take time on that, because I've got some thoughts on it that I'll contribute to the conversation as it goes, but they're relatively uninformed. So maybe picking up the landscape operation and management plan. Really not a lot here to pick away at. And I think that Mr. Lesser's work that he shared tonight was had many of the same issues, but also more in some respects. But just to start with, do you want me to share this, or you folks? Yeah,
Sure, let's do that.
Yeah,
We got it about 45 minutes ago.
I mean your report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll bring that up and just go through my comments on that. Let's see how it goes.
Right. And sorry, just to as a point of just procedure to the applicants, I know Mr. Lesser did share this. Really, he shared it with me at 6:10 p.m. is when it came in when I was cooking dinner for my kids. So we don't expect you to have reviewed it, and we also are certainly going to welcome your comments on anything that Michael said. But I assume that Matt is also going to, where it's practicable and where Michael wants to contribute, some of his commentary will come in as part of this discussion. But obviously, we're open to feedback on it after you've had some time to digest.
I could just say one thing about my email is that it's really just a way of structuring the questions and issues just to get it resolved, so we know exactly what we're conditioning, because I found it a little harder to figure out what we're actually going to agree to from the plan that was submitted by Based On. So it's really not a lot of positions there. It's just a matter of sort of a straw man to see, okay, is this a way to organize it? And what are we going to actually agree to for each of these things? Well, so it was not form positions, but you go on.
Good points. So just to run through the few comments I did pull out on this, and on the turf areas, and this was one of some of the questions that Michael was working through. Designating the turf areas, knowing so that operation and management personnel know where the different treatments are occurring. We need to think through how that monumentation or markers or on the ground, what's going to be there for 10, 15 years going forward, that regular maintenance is getting done according to the intent. So that's something to.
Can I comment on that briefly?
Yes.
So a couple of things. Not only will our contractor have a copy of the order of conditions and the various O&Ms, but we're going to require our landscape contractor to at all times have a copy of the O&M plan. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a laminated color rendered plan that shows finished lawn areas, various other areas, so it can designate what needs to be done where and when.
And where would that live?
Well, there'll be one in the leasing office, but we'll expect the contractor to have one as well.
Yeah. Good. And so.
In management, as you know, we will have full-time management and full-time technical maintenance staff on the site at all times, and we'll make sure that is understood and maintained in the manner necessary. You also know that we have wooden post markers around the perimeter of the 50-foot buffer as well.
Good.
Can I add one thing to that through the chair, please?
Sure.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to respond item by item, but it probably does make sense if you're willing to, just so we're staying on one topic at a time. So the revised plan set that we submitted with the most recent submission a couple weeks ago does include 17 of these marker posts that we strategically placed. I'm not even going to say along the limit of work, because in some areas we held them more landward from the limit of work. So the limit of work is what it is in order to accomplish the grading and site work, but we don't need to maintain that full limit of work in perpetuity as manicured lawn. So in some areas it represents the limit of work, other areas it's more landward than the limit of work. But the idea is that these monuments will be the visual, physical barrier, if you will, in the field that in addition to keeping a laminated copy of the plan and whatnot, there will be a physical delineation in the field to mark these areas that are supposed to be regularly maintained versus what's supposed to be left to revegetate and naturalize. So I think, besides the written plan itself, I think we've accomplished, certainly open for comment and discussion, but I think we've accomplished the actual on the ground, physical delineation of these areas on the latest site plan.
Great, thanks for that. I hadn't picked that up, but now that I'm aware they're there, I'll make sure that I look that over and see that. So thank you.
I guess, oh, no mind.
Of course, go ahead.
I guess I'm trying to figure how we do it by topic, but I can't remember, because at the ZBA meeting, there was discussion of putting up some fencing at some point. Is that still, I can't remember, I can't see exactly if that's still part of this latest landscaping and whether that's part of what you're indicating, whether if that's still part of your plan, and where that would be in terms of those demarcations is something, we don't have to address it now, but at some point, just clarify that.
It's on topic, so I mean, I can certainly, if through the chair, I can address that.
Please.
Mr. Lesser, yes, that did come up. I recall that during the ZBA process. My recollection was it was a discussion about, how to, similar to tonight, how to delineate these areas so that the folks that are actually doing the maintenance and upkeep know where to maintain up to. I think fencing was one of the items that had come up during the ZBA process. And we eventually, that conversation evolved and led to the idea of providing marker posts, but not actually delineating with fencing, because the limit of what is going to be maintained, it's a fairly obvious limit in the field, even without the marker posts. So in other words, we have these small yard areas behind the buildings, and then we grade down to catch up to existing, and then we're at existing. So we put the marker posts at the top of the slope. So everything from there on can just naturalize. So my recollection and what I would say tonight is we have, besides the marker posts, I think there will be a fairly obvious delineation in the field of these areas where it's not going to be, up for interpretation in the field by the landscape. I think it will be fairly obvious by the physical characteristics of the land, specifically the grading of the land. So that combined with these marker posts, and we put the marker posts, we didn't do them at an exact interval. We did them where they made sense based on the zigs and the zags of the, the area. So, but we made sure that every marker post will be visible. You can look either way and see the next one down the line. So we didn't space them so far apart that you couldn't see the next one. So fencing, we just don't think is really something that's warranted here. I just don't think it will be needed. I think what we've done will delineate physically in the field sufficiently.
Okay, I thought you actually wanted to do that at the time, but that's okay. We can keep going on.
Sure. Let's see. On number 3, I assume that this was just a typo, page 7 of 8, because it's a 5-page document, and you have a resource area management section on page 4 of 5. So I assume that's just a typo. So I just wanted to point that out and make sure that was actually correct. Let's see. There are some questions about whether or not mown areas will have clippings removed. I think that's something to discuss. Michael, that was a concern that you would put on the table. But maybe that's
We
something
do remove clippings.
you do.
To me, again, I'm sort of out of order in a way, but to me, going through this landscape management plan is a little tricky. Part of what my issue is, and what I wrote in my email, was that I find that that I'd rather approach the landscape plan by what the management approach is for each type of area. This sort of jumps around, this sort of, the way it's written now, sort of cuts across that. So it's a little, I don't find it very clear cut to me as to how things are going to be done. It's almost like what I was being a little bit, I'll push it now, is to say, I'd like to have the management plan arranged by area, so to match the color coding that you're going to come up with, so that it's very clear for each area what's going to be allowed to be put on, not put on, how it's going to be managed. And I find walking through the current management plan is a little confusing, because it's not quite organized that way. So I'll be as pushy to suggest whether it's that I'd almost say it needs to be rewritten and organized by each area as to what would be done. And that would be clearer for us in terms of conditioning the project, at least for me. And I think even for the contractor, as to how to manage it and how to look at the color codes that you talk about. I mean, I'd love to see that color coded thing as part of our the NOI, because it's mostly there. There's just some vagaries about it. It gets a little tricky as to what's turf and what's turf in the 50, 0 to 50 versus 50 to 100. Are we really going to have a different management plan for those in terms of whether you can put herbicide or any kind of fertilizer? But it's almost like I'd like to agree on what the management practices are going to be for each type of area. And then we can figure out how to write it up as a plan.
So if you don't mind me asking for clarification, Michael, are you, you're saying there's basically a finite number of area types, and they're each going to be subject, based on where they are and what type they are, to different sort of management. Like, for example, inside the 50, we're not going to
That's what I put in my email. My email lists a bunch of categories. Maybe we want to compress some, or I've done it, but I was trying to basically list what I think of the different areas that might or might not have different management plans. But I just wanted to, and that's how I would like to actually discuss, just agreeing as to what will be done in each area. And then we could figure out how it gets presented.
Sorry, let me just, I want to get some clarification for myself and anybody else who might be trying to get the same thing. So right now, because I read through the landscape management plan, and right now the way it's broken out is it's broken out by sort of leaf removal or weed control, or these different things. And then what you're saying is you'd have to basically apply that to each of these different areas, because there's going to be different.
You can look at what I wrote. If you pull up the email, it's very simple as to the categories and what's.
I know. I'd rather ask than read. So, if you don't mind,
it's like 7 lines. It's not a lot of text.
Okay.
Right. Through the chair, I think I understand what Michael's saying. I'm not sure we can get it as micro as he's suggesting, but what I would suggest, given the fact that I literally just got his email an hour ago, I'd like for us and our team to read through it, understand it, look at the O&M, and see when we come back to you, or we'll send it to you in advance, how we would approach various areas and what aspects of the O&M might apply to area A and what aspects might apply to area B, etc.
So let me do this, because I'm trying to pull a couple different threads together. So let me just lay this out, because my understanding of what Michael is saying is that you've got it organized by thing you're going to do, and then it would have to apply to multiple different areas. And what he's saying is it better to the areas, because they're more of what drives the sort of the differences in treatment. And so that's sort of how he's thinking about organizing it. And I'm trying to look at the other thread, which is Matt Byrne kind of bringing his comments on your landscape management plan out and sort of give you some other things to think about. I still think, even though this is organized in a way that may be some people, including Michael, would like to see done differently. Because I agree with Michael in this sense, which is the way we do stuff is really tends to be broken out by habitat type, inner versus outer buffer, and those kinds of things. Because in the inner buffer, there's certain things we are not going to want that in the outer buffer we might tolerate, and so on. So I think organizing it that way ultimately makes sense. I think, Mr. McDowell, what you're saying is you'd just like the opportunity to look at what he's saying and apply that to what you've written already. So I think
Or adjust it accordingly.
right. And so what I think makes most sense then is, even though it's kind of going at it based on the outline you've got in the landscape plan now, is I still think we should sort of put Matt's comments on the table for you so that you can bring these two threads, what Michael's talking about, what Matt's talking about, together, so we can talk about, so we can get something put together for the next time to kind of hopefully, finalize.
Mr. Chair, may I ask one thing?
Of course.
When we typically put together our landscape O&M documents and work with contractors, they're typically used to seeing it in this fashion when we're dealing with weeding, where's the weeding section, or we're dealing with this, where's this section. Doing it this way, I'm not sure if it's going to basically be 3 O&Ms in a row with various sections and each one weeding. Okay, I go to the section under the 100 foot, outside the 100. You go to the section inside the 50 to 100. You got to go to the section, and if they're going to be jumping around the document, it might be harder to follow in the field than what kind of finding the one section and seeing it broken down within the section.
So let me respond to that, but hold on, let me respond to that, because I think it's interesting what you're saying, because ultimately it actually doesn't matter. You could put the color codes inside of lawn, leaf collection or mowing, and it would still have the same effect, although for us or for Michael it might not flow as naturally. But if you're telling me that a contractor is going to come in and do landscaping and just sort of maintenance stuff, is sort of used to seeing it the other way, I'd rather orient it, as you're saying, toward them, as long as we have the breakdown within each category so that we understand it and it's easy enough to understand.
Partly what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to force you to how you want to do it. It's just how to get clarity about what's going to go on in each one. You could rewrite it the way you want, but the structure I was setting up is so that we could actually, if you want to spend time tonight, do a first cut at agreement on those things, because then I don't care how you write it up, what's most useful. It's just a matter of how we would structure our thinking to just get agreement as to what goes on in each place. And that's mainly the structure that I put forth there. So it's clearer for us to just get agreement, and then you can write it up in your way.
Well, I think we'd like time to absorb everything you said, and we'd like to study it vis-a-vis looking at the plan as we're reading what you wrote. As an example, take where we're putting in the post at the 50. From the 50 to the wetland area, and including the wetland area itself, at least behind buildings 1 and 2, that I believe we're going to be allowed to mow that once a year. Now the question then becomes, do you want us to pick up the mowings, or is that a no-no? Do you want us to rake the leaves out of there when they all fall, or do you want that to build up over the years? I think it would be helpful if you give us indications on those issues, so then we can incorporate that into a plan.
That's the way I wrote it that way, so that we could do that tonight. We could walk through them and see if we can make a cut as a commission to give you those signals. And with Matt's help.
Let me share that, because I've got that. I've got Michael's email up here on the right. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what we were talking about, the turf areas and managing the blocks of area, some as managed turf, some as conservation wildlife mix, which would have a different structure and plant composition, and therefore a different management regime. So yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you. If you guys take Michael's email and think that through, think about how you're going to break up the overall project into these different management zones that you would color code and communicate with your contractors, I think, and then share that, come back and share that. I think that would be a real helpful way for the commission to think through okay, in this particular zone, we're closest to the wetland and they're going to be managing it this way. Does that fit with our expectations and demands, you know? And so I think that'd be a good way to look at it. So I think that from a landscaping management standpoint, maybe table that, let the applicant think through Michael's email, think through the management zones that would be developed for the site, and then present that as a plan next time.
But can we give him feedback tonight on some of these areas? That's what he's asking for. We can
Yeah.
actually walk through and do a first cut at some of it, maybe not all, but give him some feedback.
Yeah.
Unless if it makes sense that you can help with that.
If I could, I'm looking at the first section. We'll come back to you on that. Let's talk about the invasive management. We did have someone come out and look at taking down the buckthorn and putting the herbicide or whatever it was on the various tips. And they gave us a sense of cost on that, but they said they've done this before and there's no way they could guarantee that it doesn't come back because it's a very powerful plant and it's got subsystems in the roots and everything else where it's probably going to come back, and no guarantees from an environmental point of view either. So they highly recommend, and we highly recommend, that we thoroughly go through and mow it down heavily and brush hog the hill, which is the section where it's the thickest and the most dense. But I think some clarity on that tonight would be helpful.
Who did you talk with?
We walked it with who are they?
Curtis Landscaping.
Curtis Landscaping. They do all our maintenance management on 250 acres of 1,100 homes in Hopkinton.
They actually, yes, and he was pretty surprised by how much there is, and said doing it on this scale, you're almost guaranteed that it's coming back, that you're never going to get it at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so their recommendation is to mow the wetland portion, which is sort of chest high, as I recall, mow that down close to the ground, and keep that up once a year.
Yes, and
Sure.
brush hog that hill.
Yep.
Some of it may even require a little bit of chainsaw work because some of it's 1.5 inch caliber even. So
Right.
That's going to be a lot of work. But I think if you cut that as close to the ground as possible, I think it'll come back, but not come back nearly as aggressively as it has.
Yeah. My recommendation for the commission to think about, and we've talked about this a bit, and I don't know how you feel, but for that edge that's got these really big buckthorn clumps and 1.5 inch caliber plants, I'd cut those. I'd hit those with an herbicide and get those real big ones. I'd try to tackle that at least, and maybe I think that I'd probably agree with Curtis's opinion about annual brush hogging of the mowing of the wetland portion, but I think for that real robust hedgerow, I might try to get that with an herbicide on the first cut there. Just my opinion. So I think I'll kind of back off of that, but I think that's all told, whether you do the herbicide or not, I think seems like a reasonable approach for that problem there.
Michael, did you want to say something? Oh, and Carol too, but Michael, go ahead.
I want to ask you, I guess the hillside right, I should go look and see. Is that buffer zone, or is that in the actual resource area, that the 1.5 inch stuff that we're talking about? Because I'm not sure where. One of the problems, I wasn't sure where on the field.
It's probably in the 25-foot buffer.
Yeah, it's as you start going up out of
the back there.
The wetland.
So is it really worth? I mean, it's the buffer zone. Are we really going to be able to? Is there some other alternative of whether you keep it? I can't tell if the trees get tall enough and whether you basically just worry about the understory.
Well, the alternative is you cut it down, you go in with a backhoe and you rip all the roots out and truck them away.
Right. I mean, I guess I'm trying to think of what's practical with the seed bank and whatever, although I've, okay, I'm just trying to think of,
Or you could leave it in the buffer.
yeah, the issue came up last time of where is it worth fighting this thing and whether there's whether if you left the trees and, I mean, it's probably too hard to leave the trees, but then just focus on the understory. And even though it does bury and stuff like that, but whether you can still have a successful understory. I have some of that on my property, but it's tricky.
The buckthorn in the wetlands area, if we mow that once a year, I think it'll keep it under control.
Oh, no, that I agree. I actually have no problem with that. I'm just trying to think of whether it's worth fighting, what battle is worth fighting.
So, Carol, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I have a few comments that I just wanted to throw in here, knowing that we were going to look at Michael's comments, that I want to give some additional input. So I would say with the buckthorn, I think that Matt's recommendation is a good one, because we know from other areas like the Barber that when you have these mature buckthorn, they're just constantly shedding berries, and then the birds spread them, and now you have more buckthorn. So I think getting rid of that mature buckthorn is a good strategy. And I think, if Matt thinks that, whatever Matt thinks is the best technique, I would go with. So that's one thing I want to mention. The second thing I want to mention is that so much of this development is so close to the 50 that when I saw the use of the language about herbicide, I really think that herbicide should be eliminated. I saw it in one section, it was described as using it basically to get rid of weeds along driveways and sidewalks. And I think that a string trimmer, just, at least in my yard, can take care of that without that. And also, although this doesn't have to do with wetlands, it was described as spraying at the discretion of the contractor, depending on weather. And I don't know whether that might even be hazardous to the people who are living there. So there are a couple different places, and I agree with Michael to just eliminate herbicides. This is so close to the wetlands. And then the third thing I wanted to mention is there are places where you're talking about non-native plants. There's so many beautiful native landscape plants. And again, because of where this is, I really would like to see the use of native plants. I do understand that some landscapers are used to using non-natives, but there's just a tremendous opportunity there to reinforce the habitat by using native plants. So those were my 3 comments.
Matt, what do you think of what Carol's talking about in terms of herbicide and the native plants?
Yeah, so at one of our earlier meetings, we had talked about alternative native berry shrubs and so forth. And I know we've had that conversation. I go look for that detail, but we should. And I don't know if the applicant made changes to the planting plan at this stage, so that's something to discuss. But I absolutely agree. There are plenty of good native alternatives that are better wildlife food and better habitat. So yes, that's absolutely. Please.
I say I can look at our plan, and as far as natives, I assume you mean things like Calmia latifolia, mountain laurel, or blueberries, or viburnum and things like that.
Yes. Yeah. And I had shared a couple of websites that had plant offerings, things that places to turn to for.
Yeah, we're very familiar with native plant material.
I believe we did that in our updated landscape plan.
I thought so, yeah. So I think that's all good. As far as eliminating the use of herbicides in general for long-term maintenance, I think that's ideal. I think to the extent that can be achieved, especially And again, I think when you come back with that refinement of the management zones, that would be a good opportunity to look at that and, just say when we're in buffer, there shouldn't be herbicides being used. That I think would be a reasonable thing. I do take the exception that I think for those real robust hedgerow of buckthorn, a one-time or maybe two-time treatment of cutting, hitting them, and really trying to knock them back would be a real benefit overall to the area, because of that the comment that they are shedding berries. When they get that big, they're shedding a lot of seeds, and so doing something. And at this point, when they get that big, you're going to really disturb a lot of ground to do anything other than a cut and paint approach. So those, I'm in agreement with everything that was just said, really.
Would the board
Mr.
be
Chair.
opposed to taking a backhoe and just taking them all out? That would require going into the wetland.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, we're more inclined to try to knock down the big ones and just control it in an ongoing fashion rather than that much disturbance.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that too, that it would turn over so much earth that the cut and paint with the herbicide. I understood what your landscaper said, that it might not happen once, so maybe that would have to take place a few times.
That would get
It was
very costly if you did it a few times.
It's very costly to do it just once. It's a very big expense for a affordable project.
Yeah, it was close to $40,000.
Is that for that one row of the mature ones or for
No,
everyone?
that was for all of it, but the ones down below are, they're
The
tiny.
majority of it is the big row. The majority of it is for that large. It surrounds the entire field, so that is majority of the
And
cost
that
expense to be cutting and painting that.
Yeah, my guess is that one's probably 25,000, because you got
Probably
the
more.
cutting, you got the cutting, you got the chipping, you got the hauling away of materials, then you've got to go in there by hand with these chemicals and hit probably thousands of those little stems.
Maybe you could provide a separate estimate just for this. I didn't realize, I was not aware of how big that row is. Matt, do you have a sense of this row of the largest ones?
Yeah, it sticks out in my memory. I remember, but I don't have a measurement on it. That might actually be something that would be worth doing, is identifying
I did a plan. It's over 300 feet long and at least 25, 30 feet wide.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, can I ask you a question? If we don't, I know that management of this is always sort of a limited effect. If we go in and sort of cut and paint once and then, sort of annually or whatever the time period needs to be, go in and mechanically kind of just, brush hog it or just make sure we keep it low to the ground so that they don't get so big. Is that going to be an effective way to sort of in an ongoing fashion maintain it?
I think it's going to be your best bet. I think it's going to be the best bet.
Can we
Yeah,
avoid?
go ahead, Michael.
Right. I guess the biggest work. I like the idea of, hearing this, whether we just to get what signal we're giving to based on of that we can go in and cut all the big ones. The question is whether I go back and forth about the herbicide there, whether that one application is really going to amount to much. And if we're not going to do it repeatedly, and we've been on the fence a lot of times as a commission as to whether we're going to do herbicides in these things. And I'm trying to think of whether the marginal gain is so little versus the real gain is cutting all the big stuff so that so these areas can be eventually brush hogged or just mowed annually. That's really that we could avoid the chemical application, we could avoid the cost and the effort, is of marginal value compared to the fact of whether you just do the big cut the first round and then just keep cutting it annually and hope for the best there. They can come back to us if it's totally ineffectual, but that we can avoid the chemical.
So
And
let me ask Matt specifically to what you're saying. Would it be roughly equivalent to cut it back, annual mowing versus cut it back, paint it once to kill off part of it, and annual mowing? Are they similar?
You would have a more dramatic and lasting effect on that big hedgerow if you did hit it with an herbicide. You know, it would have a materially more significant effect, and you know, that would take out a lot of pretty mature shrubs in that row. It wouldn't do anything for the wetland meadow area that's going to be maintained via mowing, but it would have a pretty good effect on that hedgerow. You know, I think that Michael's point, cutting it and then just keeping that as part of a annually mown area will knock it back and keep it back on a certain level, but not as effectively. But I agree. You know, if I'm always hesitant to recommend chemicals. I don't like it if I can avoid it, but there are circumstances where, you know, it's useful. But I think that you'd get more significant control immediately if you use the chemical treatment in that area. But over the long term, you know, if the goal is to just kind of keep them, you might do your cutting before they fruit, you know, and just keep them down below fruiting size. And that might get you where you ultimately can hope to be, which is a lower production of fruit, you know.
I would, I guess, right. I guess it's unclear how much more we get from the chemicals. I'd say if the commission wants to give the signal to do some chemicals, that I would actually suggest that we do it for, that we maybe only do it for half of it or some pick of it so we could actually see the impact, whether it makes a difference, that we can actually learn something for the future with that.
So 50% off?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's an additional cost, plus I feel uncomfortable using the herbicide. I mean, I might still say not to use it, but the commission as a whole might say to use it. But if we do go forward with any of it, I would suggest we only do some half of it or some fraction of it to actually learn something about what makes a difference here.
I would like
to be kind of marginal and to save some money.
If I could through the chair, I would like to suggest, if you're going to ask us to do herbicides, please don't ask us to then annually mow it. Or if we're not going to herbicide it, we can mow it. But it seems to do both is like insult to injury financially. You know, it is an affordable housing project, and this has taken on a life of its own.
Then I would have just the annual mowing. Then I think that's going to be more effective in the longer term. If that's the choice, well, I understand that we don't have to accept that choice, but I would say that I would rather go with the annual mowing and no herbicide, because I think we'll get more out of it than just one shot of herbicide and leaving it.
I agree. I think in the long run, the two things the effect will eventually converge. And if that's the case, and we can save the applicant some significant outlay when we're going to try to get to the same point eventually anyway. And given the just sort of general reluctance the commission has in terms of herbicide application in jurisdictional areas, I think then, yeah, let's just go with annual mowing. Unless, I mean, other commission members, please weigh in. But I think, Carol, I don't know if you have an opinion about that or anybody else, but.
I mean, the only opinion I'd have is just based on, you know, over at the Barber, we also have this big infestation, and the proposal we did get from the Native Plant Trust was to use herbicide to kick it back. If the commission feels strongly about against herbicide, I guess the only other thing I'd say is, it sounds like with those bigger ones, you'd actually have to not just mow it, but take a chainsaw and get them right to the ground. Because otherwise, how are you going to keep it even brush hogged or mowed? I mean, it's, if they're as big as they're saying. So
Well,
there'll be some
well,
manual work anyway to begin with.
If I could explain, you've probably seen on the side of roads and highways, they have this articulating piece of equipment as an arm with a big blade in the front. Either that,
Actually, you don't have to describe it to me because it comes right by my house. Every
okay.
year, I've seen it.
So I think on the initial phase with that larger material, you're going to need a machine like that that literally can cut inch, inch and a half, and even 2-inch material. I think once you've cut it down pretty flush to the ground, if we were to then come back on an annual basis, you're not dealing with something like that. What you're going to be dealing with is new sprouts coming up.
Yeah.
And I want to mention something about that though, because they do brush hog by the side of the roads here. And for instance, in front of my house, there's a native elderberry that gets brush hogged every year, and it comes back to be 6 feet tall by the end of the summer. So I think it's not as controlling as you might think, depending on how the plant responds. And I don't know, Matt, I see you nodding your head, so I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are.
That it's an intractable problem. At the end of the day, it's this is a heavy infestation of a plant that does fairly well in this condition. So I think that we've got to make an effort. We've got to do what we can within reason. And I think that an annual mowing program is a good approach. I agree with you. It will come back, every year, but I think it's better than leaving it be. And I think one thing that we might try to figure out is the right time of year to do it. If it's done at the beginning of this growing season, that's probably not the best thing. Buckthorn is in full fruit and dropping seeds in late summer. So if that work were timed so that you cut it after it's put all its energy into making fruit, but before they're ripe, you make it work real hard, and then it gets nothing out of it. And over time, that will actually help knock back the population. So through careful timing and sort of an adaptive strategy, so that mowing is done in relation to the state of berry production. That's one of the better ways you can approach dealing with that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. You're probably looking early July.
Yeah. And then you're in a situation where it's grown up, it's starting to put a lot of energy into fruit. You knock it back, and it doesn't have time to do another flower and fruit for the year. So you may get to a point, if you do it right, where that population never really sets fruit, and that would be a good thing.
Okay.
So we finished, we've given them advice, and we've observed.
Mr. Leitner.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to respond to a couple of points that were made earlier, not necessarily about the buckthorn, but before that. And I'll be quick out of respect for everyone's time. So regarding just the general use of herbicides in not the buckthorn, but in the project site, one of the commissioners had commented about along roadsides and maybe sidewalks, things like that. I will point out that while much of the project is within the 100-foot buffer, it's mainly contained to the rears of the building. So actually the driveways, the parking and sidewalks are almost entirely outside the 100-foot buffer. There are exceptions. There are areas of those features in the 100-foot buffer, but it's almost entirely outside the 100-foot buffer. So I just wanted to clarify that. So we acknowledge that portions of the project are in that buffer, but those specific areas that were brought up are almost entirely outside the 100-foot buffer. Also, the landscape plan that was most recently submitted a couple weeks ago with our latest package did address both natives and also specifically the burying shrubs. So that was addressed in that plan based on the feedback we got at the last meeting of your commission. So that is in that plan. Lastly, I just wanted to comment on Mr. Lesser's email relative and the conversation tonight relative to the management of the different zones, coming out from the wetlands, the inner 50 feet, outer 50 feet, and then outside the 100-foot. And so with operation maintenance plans, whether it's a landscape O&M plan or a stormwater O&M plan, we always try to strike a balance between conveying the information and setting up a management plan that achieves whatever the goals are that we want to achieve, but also not making it overly complex or setting up these areas in a way that it's going to be hard to determine where they actually are for anybody that's out in the field. So what I've found in my career is that, if you strike that balance between providing enough information to achieve whatever the goals are, but not making it overly complicated, it has the best chance of successfully being implemented. And that's in everybody's best interest. So relative to the landscape O&M plan, the way I envision it, and again, Baystone and myself and the landscape architect will talk based on the feedback we got tonight, but I envision really two zones, which are anything that is outside or within, I should say, on the wetland side of these marker posts, right? That's the area that's just going to be allowed to go natural or naturalize, but for any treatment or mowing of the buckthorn, which it sounds like we're headed in the knock it down, then do an annual mowing at a specific time that is best for that. So one treatment on the wetland side, of those marker posts, which I just want to make the distinction. They do not exactly, and I think I did this before, but I've heard it come up again. They do not exactly follow the 50-foot inner buffer, outer buffer line, right? So some areas they're a little bit closer than 50 feet, some areas they're farther than 50 feet. It really follows the natural, what will be the topography of the land, which I think is a better line to follow in the proposed condition than this a 50-foot line or a 100-foot line that is not going to be apparent at all in the field. So I envision one treatment plan, which is basically nothing except for that buckthorn management inside that line, and then outside that line is the other treatment, which is regular maintenance and management of the turf, of the landscaping, etc. I think to try to delineate the 50-foot line, which is not going to exactly follow the posts, and then this 100-foot line, which isn't going to follow anything on actually on the ground in the real world once this is built out. I think that's going to be tough. So, again, I'll talk to Baystone, we'll go through this, but I really envision this if we do a color-coded plan or delineate these areas somehow, it's going to be what happens outside that line, what happens inside that line. And I think that stands the best chance of being successfully implemented in a way that the people that are going to be doing the maintenance can follow. And so I just want to say that I don't see this plan following these, a 50-foot and 100-foot line exactly, because those are not going to make sense on the ground once this is built out.
That makes good sense, Matt. And I think that that doesn't come through in the management plan. So I think if between the, a graphic that you're thinking about And if you can make that kind of, if you can express that both graphically and get the plan to say that, what you just described, that would be satisfying to me. As I say, that what you've just explained makes sense, but doesn't really come through in the plan.
I think we can, you know, if the commission's in agreement with that, I think we can certainly convey that a little bit more clearly.
So,
Yeah, but
My only question is, so that line that you're talking about, where is that line? Is it sometimes at the 75 foot? Is it sometimes at the 50 foot? Is it sometimes at the 125 foot? Like, what are we talking about? I guess that's my concern.
well, they can pull up the plan. I mean, it's very clearly marked on the landscape plan to look at, but it goes along parallel to the backs of buildings and things like that. So it's
Right,
really.
so the latest plan set has these marker posts on them, and I think if we prepare a graphic to supplement or accompany the landscape O&M plan, that's what the areas would follow, is those lines or those posts. That would be the delineation.
And all I'd say is to you, Matt, is that I understand and I'm not surprised by that, and would expect something akin to that. It's just that, right, it's not, as the other Matt said, it's not clear in the plan. And the question is, you get into little issues where I didn't expect to have a plan this detailed, but I just almost wanted to discuss and giving feedback from Matt, where there are those areas that are, that because we do have areas of seed mix 1, 2, and 3. And I just want to be clear about what's going in each of those areas in terms of the maintenance, of whether we're getting what I think we best want for those kind of seed mixes, where they should be mowed and left there. It's just the nitty gritty of just how are those 3 areas going to be managed. And the turf area is a little tricky outside, right, between the inside and the outside of those markers. On the turf area and landscaped areas, it's still a matter of, right, I'd like to simplify the fact that, right, you have some turf that's in and out of our jurisdiction. And I'm trying to think of what's practical. I'm just trying to highlight, in a sense, that we have that sort of trickiness of the fact that the way it's even written now, there's different management in the 0 to 50, from the 50 to 100, and then beyond. But there is turf in all 3 of those areas. So I'm just trying to figure out, what do we come to as an agreement as to how you're going to manage the turf areas, is what my thing is really to highlight. Is the fact that we do have that the plan itself even now varies around that, and how practical is that?
We'll get back to you on that.
So I think we can clarify that, you know,
and I'll just give you the guidance that, right, it's going to be, we're going to want to keep the herbicides out of our jurisdictional areas, even though the turf extends both in and out. But I would like to still spend a little time now, even quickly, to see whether for Matt Byrne, like seed mix 1, 2, and 3, what is it that we want them to just say about those in terms of what we're gaining from those, and whether we could just quickly just sort of not leave it uncertain until whatever comes next time, or maybe we could just, whether you want to give any quick feedback.
As far as when I looked at the proposed seed mixes in earlier iterations, I didn't review that sheet on the current plan set. I presume that those seed mixes haven't changed, because I don't think we talked about that. I think those seed mixes looked fine to me at the time, and it was the larger plantings, the shrubs and things that
I just wanted to know the maintenance. I wasn't responding to what was good. It was just a matter of, are those things just cut once a year, left alone, cut and leave stuff? That's all I want to know. It's that.
Yeah,
it's very simple.
Yeah,
Michael, I understand what you're saying, and we'll be able to come back to you on that.
Okay, I just wanted to know if Matt would weigh in, because that way we wouldn't have a back and forth, but okay, fine.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to like less maintenance, particularly in wildlife seed mixes, or, things that we're trying to promote wildlife in, so if the operation and management or landscape management plan has, infrequent mowing for areas that are seeded for wildlife, that's a good thing.
I was just trying to get at whether you'd say, we just cut it once, like seed area 1, mix one. It's just cut once a year at some date. Or we could go into this discussion next time, but whether we can head it off and just sort of give whether there's a fairly clear outcome that we would like. And whether you would recommend it anyway, so that we don't, but okay. That's the purpose of sort of what I laid it out there. But okay, we can wait till next time if you want.
Do you want, through the chair, do you want to continue with Michael's list?
The only thing I want, sure, the only thing I want to make sure of is that whatever feedback, Matt, you've developed for the landscape management plan gets communicated tonight as well. So at some point, I guess I don't care one way or the other which way we do it or what we do first, but I just want to make sure that those comments get registered with the applicant as well.
Sure. One other comment with regard to invasive species, that since we were talking so much about that, I wondered who it is that is responsible for identifying an invasive species when it comes to annual maintenance, the ongoing maintenance, 5-10 years down the road. Who is it that is expected to recognize spotted knapweed and say, we got to deal with that?
Well, we do
when
have
it shows up on site.
We do have landscape architects who we deal with on a constant basis.
Okay. So that's someone that you've got people that have that expertise, who have that eye that will be paying attention to the ongoing program.
Yeah, so we actually have some in our office as well.
Great. Okay.
Could I ask questions about the third-party construction monitor? Michael's comments. It says BSC comments 17 and 19. I'm not sure what those are.
That's in the original peer review.
So I know, but just sitting here, I don't remember what they are.
Oh, okay, we can pull it up.
Hold that up. Basically, well, I shouldn't paraphrase. What the tenor of the comment was that there should be a construction monitor who is working on behalf of the Conservation Commission throughout the project. I understand you talked about having a construction monitor, and and that's good, but there should be an agent who's working on behalf of the commission.
No, this is the person. This is the person that comes by once a week, correct?
It would be a once a week, yeah.
And Michael added a note, and after X number of inches of a precipitation event.
Yeah.
And I would propose that would be 3 inches.
Oh, we usually use a ½ inch as a trigger. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of silly. I mean, ½ inch does nothing.
Well,
you'll be there additional times every other week, maybe 2-3 times a week.
It doesn't.
That's not
it doesn't usually pan out that way. That's how. And I said this at the outset. That's not put in there to try to generate business for BSC Group. We do that kind of work, and we have contracts for construction monitoring on a weekly basis, and they have. I will go back and confirm, but I'm fairly certain they're usually written at a ½ inch storm event.
I've never heard of that. We have other towns where the reason, first off, you're coming once a week anyway. Yeah. Secondly, usually if you come for a storm, it's just that it's the concern of significant amount of rain that causes erosion that may actually break through your wattles or something such as that. A ½ inch of rain, if you have the proper wattles in place, is not going to do anything. It seems like a useless event to come up with something so insignificant.
I will verify what threshold we use. I'm fairly certain it's ½ inch.
But I'm just saying from a practical point of view, that makes no sense.
Okay, I mean that's a fair opinion.
I mean, 3 inches is a very heavy rainstorm, so maybe it's 1.5 inches, which is a decent rainstorm, but not something that would cause significant erosion.
Well, my question would be, Matt, do you have a sense of if ½ inch is the trigger, how often that would prompt somebody to visit? I mean, especially as sort of storm events become more significant, the ½ inch essentially becomes a lower threshold. but I'm just curious if you have any kind of on hand, then you don't have to. We can always sort of pick it up at another time. But do you have any sense of how often that is triggered?
I don't. No, I don't. So let me this week I'll find out what we use in our contracts for a storm event trigger, and I'll also talk to some of our construction monitors and find out how often they're going out in addition to the once a week monitoring run.
Let's get that information before we sort of try to negotiate some middle ground, because we don't know what the middle ground is.
Yeah,
I'll
because
I'll check with our engineers as well.
That'd be great.
because I looked at recently, we did it for another project that we were using 1 inch, I think, at one point, and I think it would, even 1.5 inches didn't add that much, although the significant storms recently, but it wasn't that much of a frequency. We have some data that.
Okay. Well, let's get the feedback from the applicant and BSC, and then we'll see where we are.
Great.
So was it, Mr. McDowell, was your question about the construction monitor just about that particular aspect, the rain event?
If you don't mind, if you could take down I can't see Michael's.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so the tree thing we talked about. So let's talk about the fill. What we negotiated with the ZBA, there's certain parameters for what's allowed to fill and what's not. And we said that we would submit all the paperwork and any fill we're bringing in prior to bringing the fill in. And it has to meet the parameters, and we'd be subject to review if it didn't meet the parameters. But it was very problematic to have it go a week, because what happens is in the fill industry, fill becomes available, they send you the paperwork, and it's gone within a day or two, and you're back to nowhere. So we'd have a real problem with having to submit a week in advance. And again, I have a real issue with, someone deciding they might want more testing. Well, if we meet the parameters of what the testing model is, I think that's just an open door to have somebody arbitrarily decide they want to test it more. That's my concern. As far as the stumps go, I have no issue with that. We plan on taking any and all stumps off site.
I guess, right. I remember that issue at the meeting about the timing, that was something that was difficult, and that we would try to figure out something there if we deal with the 2 points there. I guess what's reasonable in terms of, right.
I believe the fill was as addressed in the comprehensive permit. Stephanie, can you speak to that?
Right, yeah, I was going to say, so if I may, Mr. Chairman, it's a specific condition within the comp permit that it already has the fill with, as opposed to a 7-day notification, a 24-hour notification. And that's a condition that was written into the comp permit that any fill, not only does it have to be clean fill, but that it, as opposed to a 7-day that was under the bylaw, and we asked for a waiver of that, and the board, the ZBA, granted the waiver and just had to be 24 hours in advance. So we've somewhat addressed that. I appreciate Michael's point, but he's bringing up a point that's under the local bylaw, and we addressed that to the comp permit.
But yeah, no, I agree. I just wanted to, I guess when I was writing this, right, I had enough time to go back and see whether all of this, so it included that right, I guess it is.
Michael, I'd like to also tell you that as we've stated to the board many times, this is a long-term hold for our family in a project like this. And the other thing that's very important, the last thing we would ever do is bring in any tainted soil to something we're going to own, number one. Number two, whenever we do permanent financing on projects such as this, the banks are very, very careful in having soil phase 1s and phase 2, if necessary, done to make sure whatever they're financing has clean soil. So we're super sensitive about what soils we bring onto our sites.
Yeah, no, I can understand. I know about all the Chapter 21E stuff and things like that. No, at this point, it was a little bit of a flag to make sure. I couldn't remember. Right, whatever the ZBA did, and we have to live with that. And so in a way, we don't have we don't have any ability to push this any further than what you already got from the ZBA. Because I brought it up
Okay.
then. Okay, I wanted to go back before you go on, just on the, to head off any issues about whether, in terms of wording on the third-party construction monitor, whether we recognize that when the wording gets in there that you can see what tasks they had there. And the question is whether whether this construction monitor is, I just want to put on the table, is whether also reviewing I guess I didn't see what all the general construction clauses are, but maybe it does capture that the stormwater management system its installation is reviewed as part of this construction monitor.
I assume when you're talking about a third-party construction monitor, you're talking about someone who's monitoring within the 100-foot buffer, correct?
Yes, well, right. Well, it's more than that. Part of why I put it here is just for our own discussion and clarification is that since the stormwater system does have, it flows into and is in the buffer zone, that essentially having the whole system work well and everything be correctly positioned and to the specs is a wetlands issue, because also the DEP standards fall under our jurisdiction too, so that it isn't just limited to the stormwater system that's within jurisdiction, is my understanding of the rules. And it's just a matter of making sure things are done properly, is I think is part of what I think a construction monitor would do.
Well,
I wanted to put that on the table, whether that's an issue.
Well, let me say this, as the board probably is well aware, in a large project like this, everything has to be done under, it's called controlled construction, meaning everything has to be certified, whether it's the civil engineer, the structural engineer, the environmental engineer, the architect. All these people have to do sign certification in order to get a certificate of occupancy. So unlike some projects, smaller projects where things sort of just happen and then you don't know really what happened, this is controlled construction. We take pictures all the way through. Our people like Matt and others will be doing reports on the work that's been done. Everything gets inspected, so it's fairly detailed.
It's what gets inspected. I mean, maybe Matt Burr with, I guess, in construction monitoring, but when you say inspected, right, and who is doing that inspection essentially, and whether, and right, I'll admit that I haven't dealt with projects of this scale, but there is still that, to what extent that third party construction monitor does go deal with the stormwater installation. That's what Matt Byrne would say, but.
Yeah, I was going to say, Matt,
Third-party people are putting their licenses on the line.
No,
Right.
but before we get into that, I just, Matt Byrne, you said that BSC has construction monitors for the particular things that the commission be interested in, so maybe you can comment on it.
Yeah, so this is something that I've been marginally involved with, so I don't know the ins and outs of the construction monitoring tasks. But what we do is we have a person who is involved with a particular site, and they're out there every week throughout the course of construction, ensuring that limit of work is well established and not violated, that the temporary stormwater management that occurs on a large construction site is holding, and when you have big storm events, things happen, and is the erosion controls and other temporary stormwater management structures doing what they're supposed to do, all the way through the full phased project out to making sure that erosion controls and all the parts of the stormwater management system are operating the way they're supposed to operate and the way they're expected to. So we have, our construction monitors are looking at all sorts of different things throughout the entire phasing of a project like this. So, what's on my task list is to come up with, a detailed list of those things that a construction monitor working for the commission ought to be looking at. And I've started to build that list, and we'll share that with you as soon as I pull it together. Mr. McDowell, I think that it would be good to have what you were just explaining written out so that there's a, so it can be understood and included in the special conditions, the different levels of construction compliance, or all those different tasks that you were just describing would be good for the commission to understand. I don't think that will obviate the recommendation for having a third-party monitor, but I think it would be a very good piece of information to have as part of the record.
Thank you. We can do that. I think would be also very helpful from our point of view, if you, for the commission, at least reference to your own company, whether they choose you or not, I don't know, is if the monitoring was going to be done, I'll pick a timeline, 40 to 50 weeks. Now, the project will take a little longer than that, but it won't for the aspects of anything relative to the wetlands. So if let's take the high end, call it 50 weeks. So if you're coming out once a week, you're coming out 50 times. And is that for 2 hours, 1 hour, 3 hours? How long would you be coming out for?
We usually do a site walk. So depending on the size of the site, that would, but that's about an hour. And then in some projects, our monitors are involved in a weekly construction meeting. So they'll sit in on that and, contribute to the construction meeting. So that's, I think, probably 2 to 3 hour total commitment.
Okay. So
and then there's report.
You're probably looking at somewhere between 100 and 150 hours.
That's probably. I can actually. We haven't had a conversation of this.
I'm just trying to understand I'm trying to understand the magnitude. And do you have an idea? Do you have any idea what the hourly cost of something that would be?
I'll find that out. I don't want to put something on the table that I'm completely off on. So okay. I can get you kind of a sense of scale of the cost of some of the contracts we do.
If you could do that, that'd be very helpful. And if I could, through the chair, if we could have Matt Leitner explain what the role of a firm like his might be in supervision and oversight.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So there's really two items here at play. One is the temporary, the construction period, erosion controls and stormwater management, and then there's there's also the oversight of the construction of the permanent stormwater management systems. They're really two different things here. So the site is going to be subject to NIPD's construction general permit because it's disturbing over an acre. There will be a stormwater pollution prevention plan that will go along with that, requiring per EPA a certain level of inspection, monitoring, and compliance relative to construction-related stormwater and erosion control management. Relative to what Roy was talking about, the controlled construction, that really pertains to the build out of the site, the permanent features of the site. So typically on a project of this magnitude, it does fall into that category, and I would expect that with this project. And so my firm, the engineer of record, if you will be monitoring and inspecting the site at certain intervals and or certain milestones. So it's not always just, weekly you go out there. It might be, okay, they have one of the subsurface systems down to subgrade and they're going to put the stone in. We need to go look at that to make sure it looks like what we expected it to look like. Things like that. So it's not always a certain interval for us. It's certain milestones as well that we need to go out there and look at things. And the bottom line is at the end of the construction, we need to certify that the project is built in substantial conformance to the plan. So if there's something that we haven't either observed or based on hasn't proven to us that it was installed per the plan, we're not certifying it. So, you know, our license, our stamps are on the line, you know, we need to make sure things were built per the plan. So that is sort of the oversight that goes along with this to ensure from the developer's side to ensure that the project is built per the plan. So we don't certify anything that we can't convince ourselves was built per the plan. So, you know, that's how the process works from our standpoint.
Okay.
Right. Well, I guess I'll just say that, right, we'll figure out what language, I mean, I put this in here to figure out where the line is between what's an in-house, what you do at L versus what an outside third party does. It's always that, right, I don't want it to be, let this turn into a costly
Right.
burden, but it's just that sort of, what do you get for a third party as another set of eyes, and what's the independent review and how far that goes with regard to stuff that influences
Right.
well.
Right. Carol, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I have a few more things, not on this particular topic, but I
So
wanted,
before you jump in there, let me just sort of summarize. We're going to get from Matt Byrne sort of the scope of what the third party monitor would do. We'll line it up with what Matt Leitner's people would do. Obviously, the third party is the sort of the pivotal part of having a monitor that works for the commission versus for the applicant. It's not to say one is more reliable or better than the other. It's just coming from a different perspective and with maybe different sort of rubric within which they operate. So let's get the information on the table and figure out what's going to work for everybody. So Carol, go ahead.
sure. So I wanted to, before we leave the landscape plan, talk about a couple things. One was, you know, there are two big areas of mitigation because of the permanent encroachment into the jurisdictional areas. So one was the wildlife passage between buildings 1 and 2. And the second was the invasive management out in that kind of big meadow wetlands area. And we've already discussed that. I don't see in this plan, and maybe it's in another plan, how the wildlife passage will be, that area between buildings 1 and 2 will be managed to keep it natural and, you know, make it a good wildlife corridor. And maybe that's partly, you know, as Michael pointed out, I do understand what Matthew, what you said, that, you know, when you're telling somebody what to do, you want to keep it simple, but at the same time, we want to protect areas like that mitigation area, the wildlife passage, as well as obviously jurisdictional areas. So we're kind of caught in that tension between those two things. But specifically, I want to draw attention to that. And has there been, did I miss it in another document? Are there specific instructions on maintenance of that area?
So if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
One of the documents that we submitted in a couple weeks ago in the most recent package was an updated stormwater operation and maintenance plan in addition to the landscape operation and maintenance plan. So in terms of the wildlife passages, we felt that even though they're not stormwater management features, they fell more into the category of stormwater management features in the sense that they're physical structures with you know, grates on them and such. So as opposed to putting those structures in the landscape operation maintenance plan, we thought it would be best to put them in the stormwater operation maintenance plan so that the inspector that does the routine inspections of the stormwater system can also look at those tunnels at the same time and determine if they need maintenance or not. So I think the answer to your question is, you know, that's addressed in the stormwater O&M plan, not the landscape O&M plan.
Matt, the question then I have as a follow-up is, I'm looking at maybe at an earlier plan, but my recollection is that there were also going to be shrub plantings, and it was almost going to be a corridor of native plants between those two buildings. Did I misunderstand that? Because that seems like that would be part of a vegetation management plan.
Well, the vegetation, so, okay, so, no, that's a good question. There's really two parts to the wildlife corridor, as we're calling it. One is the tunnels or the passageways that go on, one goes under the road, one goes under the sidewalk. And those are what are addressed in the stormwater O&M plan, the actual concrete structures with grates on them, the tunnels. The landscaping itself along the corridors leading up to the tunnels and then between the two tunnels, those are there. So we have on the landscape plan, and we worked with Hawk, the landscape architect, on this. We have maintained areas that will not be manicured. They will be left to naturalize and only be maintained once a year. So there's a specific seed mix. We're not proposing shrubs, planted shrubs right off the bat in this corridor. We're proposing a seed mix, which is on the landscape plans, and then less frequent maintenance of that area. So once a year, just knocking it down just to keep, any saplings or trees from growing in that area, but not manicured.
Matt, if I could, through the chair.
Yes.
To answer Carol's question, this newest plan has additional plant material as further mitigation within that buffer zone.
So I just want to point out to everybody that it is 9:30. And what I'd like to do, because we've been pushing everybody a few minutes late because we started late, is to try to get a plan of attack together for the next time we get back together. Because I want to, obviously we want to make as much progress as we can. And so can we at least frame what we're going to try to do? We've spent a lot of time on landscape management, and I think it's been time well spent. I just want to understand what we're going to try to do between now and the next meeting so that when we come to the next meeting, we can make more progress. So
through the chair, what I heard vis-a-vis yourself and Michael and others is we're gonna mark up a plan for referencing the O&M, and for instance, certain areas might be mowed weekly, other areas might be mowed once a month, it might be areas that are mowed once a year. So I think things such as that will come back to you to try and address some of Michael's questions.
Okay. The other thing is, Matt Byrne, I know you had comments, and I don't recall whether you submitted them in writing to us and or to the applicant. Is that something you've done yet?
I have not. I want to see where the conversation took us tonight and before putting them together.
So I'm assuming then that within the coming days, that's something you'll do and circulate to everybody as well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well then, is there anything else that we feel like we need to communicate tonight before we continue the hearing?
Mr. Chair, may I just address Carol's comment?
Please.
I will add something to the landscape O&M that addresses the maintenance of those areas outside of the tunnel.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's
All right. Anything else?
Through the chair, what is our expectation for the next meeting? Are we hoping to close this out at the next meeting?
I think it's possible. I mean, I feel like I don't feel like there's anything that's of real contention here unless the construction monitor, how that works out, what the costs are, how much we sort of have to kind of bridge a gap there. I don't know. But just generally speaking, I think that we're within range of, coming to agreement. And Matt Byrne or any commissioners or frankly any of the applicants' representatives, you can comment differently, but I feel like we're close.
What I
What do
would
you think?
hope is if there needs to be, to speed things along, any communication between Matt and Matt, I'd encourage that to happen. So that'd be
I'm
helpful.
with you. I agree 100%. I would
For
love
us,
for that
and-
conversation to go on.
And it would be helpful to all of us. And the other is if the board has any comments vis-a-vis Stephanie or Matt Leidner, please don't hesitate to reach out directly to them.
Okay. we will do that. Matt Byrne, do you feel like we're sort of at a point where we might be able to hash through the remaining items in the next meeting?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you sense, Matt, would you be in a position to start to draft special conditions between now and then? Do you feel like we have to get through the next meeting in order to do that? Where do you think we are?
No, I've started that process, and
Okay.
so I should have something to share with you along that line, in coming days. Hopefully before we meet next time. Hopefully in time for people to look at them and see where we stand.
And I think the other thing, obviously, is the stormwater conditions. I'm hoping now that we've sort of hashed out how we're going to go forward with that we can just sort of reach out to the BSC group that's going to be handling that. And Matt, maybe you can help us coordinate that just so we can maybe get a draft of those things as well. And then maybe they're, fairly straightforward to deal with at our next meeting. Okay. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to somewhat pick up on a couple of threads there. I think also just to tie up some loose ends, if Matt Byrne, if you were going to go back, if we could get that information before the next hearing about the construction monitor and then the rain events. I do agree with Gore that a half inch seems a bit super conservative. So
Could be, and I want to be clear, I'm not certain of that. I just, that's what's in there. So
I think if you put a 1 in front of that, we'd probably be okay.
Yeah, I'll check what our usual
let's get the information
threshold is, and we'll go from there.
And then also I was going to suggest that perhaps if there is a kind of a working session between the Matts, that while Matt Byrne may want to present his proposed special conditions to the board, if there's time within that meeting for the two of them to kind of walk through, so then Matt and Matt can understand where each other's coming from. So I think that would help streamline things at a hearing then. So I would suggest that if that's possible, not to put too much on both of the Matt's plates, but I think that would be helpful.
Right, and I think it's a good idea because Matt Byrne is our consultant, and we feel comfortable with his perspective on this, that it represents the commissions, and so whatever advance work that the two Matts can do is going to be beneficial to the process. Okay.
Great.
Anything else from anybody? All right, I move that we continue this hearing to October 28th at what time, Elizabeth?
8:45.
8:45. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Neil, aye. Michael?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Is that everybody? I can't see. Sounds good. Motion carries. All right. Thank you to everybody once again, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. And Matt, I or Jean will sort of reach out to you to just kind of get synced up on what we're going to try to tackle in between now and then.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. All right.
Thanks.
Okay. So we're a little late on the NOI for Farm Road. Joyce, is this the one that we continue to continue? If you're there? Yes.
Yes, this is, we're continuing to continue.
So we are going to continue it again.
Yes,
All right. I move that we continue the NOI for 211 Farm Road to, are we continuing it to the next meeting?
please.
To October 28th at what time, Elizabeth?
How long do you want for Coolidge?
I think we should give it the same amount of time we gave it tonight, hour and a half.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 8:45, 9:45, 10:15.
10:15. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Neil, aye. Michael?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, that means we've got 6 minutes to do something.
Minutes?
We could do meeting minutes.
Let's do minutes.
I could pull up a set with some edits that I did. Or
Hit
What
it.
set did you do, Michael?
What?
Which set did you do?
I only did the first set. I didn't have time. to do
Okay,
the second.
because I did that one too. I was kind of hoping that I dovetailed with whatever you chose to do. So August 19th.
Yeah, I could just share. Should I share the
Super.
screen with what I have there, and you can
Go
tell me
for it.
stuff? Hold on, I gotta expand this so I can set the find the share screen command. Do we see a set of minutes? Let's see.
It's thinking. There it is. So one thing that I noticed is that no guests' names were taken down. Are we no longer doing that? Or did it just get missed or?
We are no longer doing that per David Williams' memo that he sent out about what's required and not required in minutes.
Got it.
Who's absent and who's there.
That's
Okay.
because we can't even tell who some of these people are, I guess. But
We
okay,
can
good.
guess.
Okay, fine. Next, anything else on this part that's showing?
I have something for 116 Farm Road.
Go.
Yeah. It's the 6th line down contractor. Oh, yeah, I see you added it. Okay. And then my name is missing from, there's 6 to 0, but I'm not in there. So you got to add me with an I.
Okay. Just we have to spell out everybody's name each time.
I guess.
Okay.
And I was fine with Whitney Farm. And then 11 Farm Road should be 211 Farm Road.
Let me know when anybody has any ready to move on.
I have under Coolidge Crossing. I have after group, I have a comma on the second line down under Coolidge Crossing. Matt Byrne, there's comma Matt Byrne from BSC Group, comma, should be comma. And then the line right below it, the clarification on if, I took out on if and I put whether. So clarification whether the comments are in order of significance. I didn't know how specific we needed to get. Let's see. So I'm now down on the second paragraph under there where it says Roy McDowell from Baystone Development. Yep. So the third line where it says applicant also stated they're not altering the BVW and mitigation enhancement. Roy actually suggested enhancements in the 50-foot buffer on slopes and oh my God, I can't remember, and such, but like, I don't know what you think of that wording versus the wording that's there. Because he actually suggested enhancements in the 50-foot buffer.
We'll keep it separate. How about mitigation enhancements were discussed?
Sure. And then I don't have anything else until the next page. I don't know if anyone else does. Under, oh, minutes. So we did actually edit and approve the 4/1/21 minutes. And the vote was 7-0.
Oh, we did do that? Okay. Let me go, to approve the, which one, to approve?
Edited and approved the 4/1/21 minutes.
For, what is it, for, what was it,
Oh.
September, what date?
Yeah, April, sorry. I'm saying for April 1st, 2021.
Wow, okay. Okay,
The only thing I had a couple more things under agents report. Yeah, all right, good, you have it crossed out, because I was gonna say nothing was presented. The other thing I would say, we don't have an adjournment, and we need adjourned at 10:48 PM. The vote was 7-0.
okay. Motion made to adjourn, to spell right?
ADJ,
Join at what time?
at 10:40 PM. Sorry, 10:48. I did say 10:40. It should be 10:48. Sorry about that.
I think I can handle that. Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Or I move to approve the minutes as edited for whatever this date is, August 19th.
Hold on. I
Fine.
see somebody has their hand raised. Sean, did you want to make a comment before that motion?
I was going to comment, you had the opportunity to start something early and now you're going to be late. So you might want to step on it a little bit. It's getting late. A lot of people waiting.
Okay. Oh, we're 2 minutes late.
Well,
We're 2
every
minutes late.
meeting I've ever been to runs a little bit off, so.
It's all right. We're only 2
While
minutes.
you're, no, Michael, I'm the chair.
Okay.
No offense taken.
What, no offense taken by whom?
By the people sitting here waiting.
Sean, you've already been instructed not to render an opinion, so can you just keep it to yourself, please? It's not constructive.
There's a motion on the floor.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Neil, aye. Michael?
Aye.
Courtney? Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Courtney, did you want to vote? Okay, well, it's still 4 with 1 not voting, so the motion passes. Okay. Next on our agenda, 3 minutes late, horror show, is the RDA for the Town Forest Committee parking area.
Hello,
So-
Karen Petroni, representing the Sherborn Town Forest Committee.
Thank you. Before you start, or before the applicant starts, I did want to talk to, or ask Joyce, I think it was Jean shared the fact that there was a perennial stream there. Is that the case?
Yes, I spoke with Karen after the last meeting. She and I had not had an opportunity to look at the USGS maps prior to the last discussion that we had. And when I pulled up the several versions of the USGS map, it shows the stream that goes past this property as perennial. It begins as an intermittent stream beyond the property line, but then runs down beside us and continues across the street as perennial.
So if that's the case, then it's riverfront area, correct?
It is riverfront area, correct?
And if it's riverfront area, there's a presumption of that has to be overcome or performance standards that have to be met, correct?
So there are additional steps that need to be taken, which can be part of either type of application. That there calls for there to be an alternatives analysis, and to identify that this is the best, in fact, location that will provide the least amount of disturbance to the riverfront.
Okay. So I'm just curious, how is it possible to give that much detail when you aren't doing it as part of an NOI?
I do not know if, since we spoke, if Karen might have had a chance to think about how she might do that.
I can certainly provide you with an alternative analysis. That's not an issue. We are definitely trying to impact the area in a positive way by removing the invasives. That's the majority of what we want to do. The roadway, the new gravel that we want to put in, it's just going over the old gravel, and they are expanding the driveway a little bit. But I thought I'd come before the meeting, come before the commission tonight and get some feedback. You tell me what you need, and I can certainly do that.
So
Have you
normally,
had?
go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Have the commissioners had a chance to visit the property? Because it's just so overrun with bittersweet. It's terrible. It's really terrible. And now it's going to seed, so it's dropping the seed. So I was just curious if anybody had a chance to go and take a look at that.
I've seen it. I drive by it frequently, so I see it frequently. And I also noticed the stream was running full force, which I think the last meeting I mentioned that it was a perennial stream. It is definitely got a lot of bittersweet there, like many places in Sherborn.
Well, we're trying to make it, we'll give you the opportunity to take advantage of the fact we want to get rid of it. So
I think normally a project in the riverfront would go through a notice of intent. I believe that this project, just, in having seen it and knowing what they're trying to accomplish here, I think it can be under the riverfront, or under as they're trying to propose it, it could be even addressed as a previously disturbed area working within.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's just, there are just things that need to be documented a little bit more. But maybe, we talk about how many conditions do you want to put under on a request for determination of applicability. And I think that might be the challenge with this, not doing it as a notice of intent, where it now is where it's in riverfront. I think if we had discussed the fact that it was in riverfront at the last meeting, we would be directed towards a notice of intent.
Right.
Well, I think at the last meeting we, because I did bring it up as an NOI, I distinctly remember this.
Yep.
I did say it was in riverfront, and I was concerned about erosion because it is on a slant toward the stream. And others at the meeting said it was not a perennial stream, but now we are finding out that it indeed was or is a perennial stream. I thought it should be an NOI. And then I think it was Michael that said, well, we can start as an RDA and we can always shift to an NOI. And so we went based on that, with the idea that this could easily be shifted to an NOI if it was indeed a perennial stream in the riverfront, which it is. So that's kind of where I'm at with it, because I don't know what the hesitancy of shifting it to an NOI is.
I guess and to echo kind of what Cindy's saying, I think when you get into a level of having to do the documentation to demonstrate that, you know, to do the alternatives analysis, to demonstrate that it's not going to have a significant adverse impact. I think it, like Joyce said, I think it's really tough to do as an RDA because it ends up being just more robustly conditioned given where it is. And I think, I don't know if it was Michael or I that said it last time, that the RDA, the whole purpose of an RDA sometimes anyway, is to determine whether or not there's a potential for adverse impact. And if there is the potential, then that's when you shift to an NOI. And that's kind of what we laid out as sort of our decision tree the last time. And I mean, other commissioners can weigh in, but I guess I'm thinking that given the fact that it is now a perennial stream and has to sort of meet more criteria for being, you know, to protect the interests of the act, that I almost feel compelled that we're sort of forced to take it as an NOI. But other commissioners can weigh in. Joyce, you can weigh in as well.
Can I say something? David Colleen here.
Sure, go ahead.
I don't know if anybody on the commission has gone in and excuse me, walked that stream of that land. That land used to have a house and 4 barns on it. When the pipeline took over that land, they took a swamp and they made that river, and it is rock lined all the way around, both sides and the bottom. So as far as your water runoff, it's not going to affect it as far as damaging the stream. The water has been running there for years, and they put a big culvert in there across the road for years. Charlie Dose actually did it years ago. So, and we're trying to protect the whole thing, and it's the way it's been since 1938, and we're just trying to protect it. You know, and I don't know why you guys are making it so difficult.
Well, Mr. Clean, just with respect to, we're not trying to make anything difficult. We've got regulations we have to abide by when there's work in a riverfront area, which this is, we've now determined it is. It means if we don't follow what the regulations tell us ought to be done, and NOI does not have to be an overly burdensome process, but if we don't follow those regulations, we're neglecting our responsibilities under both the state and the local.
I know all the regulations. I've read them over and over again. And the one thing I would
understand
like
that.
to say is a lot of the maps that are in Sherborn with the water are not correct. And that stream has gone dry many times since 1972, since I have been here. So that makes it not a perennial stream.
Well, so just with respect to that, I was actually doing a little bit of reading in advance of this meeting tonight, and there is a way for you to actually try to get it characterized as an intermittent stream. I won't be able to quote to you what the specific criteria are. I think you have to show that it's dry 4 days out of the year, but I don't know if that's seasonal or not. Is that right?
That's in non-drought season, and that's not a problem, but that's not going to happen this season.
Right. It's right. It's probably take longer to do that than to just submit an NOI. Right.
Just to do an NOI, yeah.
Yeah. So again, you know, people think we're sort of trying to be one thing or another. We're not. We have regulations. We have things we do to be protective of the interests of the Wetland Protection Act and the local bylaw. And we have to abide by those so that we can be objective with every project. Because if we let you do something that we wouldn't let somebody else do something, it's just, we understand what you're trying to do and we're happy to work with you on it. But we just have certain forms we have to follow. And unless the other commission members think that we should do this under an RDA, which I think would be a real feat of gymnastics, I feel like we're sort of compelled to do it as an NOI. But I do, let me get the feedback of some other commission members as well. If anybody wants to weigh in, Michael, Carol, Courtney, Cindy.
I've already waited.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I would agree with Cindy. I think, unfortunately, because it is riverfront, I think it should be done as an NOI. And I think the other thing about that is if there is going to be an invasive plant, you know, control plan suggested in riverfront, I think we really have to get the details of what that is and the alternative analysis as well. So yeah, I'm in favor of the NOI process.
So can I ask you a question? Are you looking for an engineered plan?
I think that the last sketch that you provided gives a great more detail. Maybe just because you all know what you're going to be doing, maybe a cross section of the materials that you're going to put down in the parking area. I think that would be helpful. I think the
Yeah.
sketch is sufficient.
Yeah, Joyce, I think like I'm inclined to follow your guidance on that. I don't know that we, even though in an NOI we generally do, but we know, I think this is a circumstance where we can kind of work with a sketch as long as it's accurate, right? Is that what you think, Joyce?
I do.
I'm
and
fine.
the
I'm
more-
fine with that.
I'm fine with that too.
The more detail you provide with the sketch, the more likely this will get approved by DEP. The last time something like someone did a sketch, it was a difficult task getting DEP
Right,
to
that's-
approve that. Because typically sketches aren't signed by an engineer or a land surveyor, and that's generally something that DEP is looking for. So the more detail you provide up front on a sketch and in your narrative. And Karen, I'm happy to work with you. You know, this is a town project. I'm happy to work with you, putting together the alternatives analysis and that before you submit it, if that will help.
Oh, I can do that. That's not a problem, but thank you very much. I think the big obstacle is going to be submitting that sketch plan to DEP. I think that's going to be tough. So let me talk to Dave, and I have a friend that maybe can help me out with the plan, and we can put together some kind of plan that DEP would accept. So,
I guess, yeah. Dave, to your comment, right, I'd like to second or repeat almost a little what Neil said. It's not that we're trying to get in the way. We get in trouble when we don't follow the rules. And I'd hope you'd appreciate that we're trying to do this in the minimumist way to work with you and to do something. It's a town project. And so I guess I'm a little taken aback by the fact that you can't recognize the fact that if this thing is, we have to go by rules. If this thing is by the standard ways defined as a perennial stream, we can't undo that either. And you're asking us to do things that are not within the bounds of what we do. And so I'd like to think that you could understand that we have constraints on how we act. And it's not we're trying to get in the way of anything. And you understand that we're just trying to do a fair job that we could defend. And so it's a little, I find that I'm a little disturbed that you view us that way, or maybe you don't understand what we have to work with.
I understand all that, Michael, and I've seen you guys and listened for years with conservation. And I just thought that you guys would have helped me a little bit more. We've been trying to get this project done. It has been talked about for about 7 years. And we come to these meetings, and from last meeting to this meeting, it comes up to a perennial stream, and it goes to an NOI. I don't think that that's really helping the town forest committee, who is supposed to be partners with you guys, and you're really not.
Well, then you misunderstand what help means then, because help means that we have to follow the rules. And we're not helping you by not following the rules.
So just as a point of clarification, Dave, it has not changed from not being a perennial stream to being one. There was an open question the last time as to whether it was. It's been determined that it is. And once we determine that it is, it makes it riverfront area, which makes it almost impossible to do as anything but an NOI. And that's really all we're trying to determine tonight. And Michael, unless you feel differently, I think that that's kind of where we are, is that this is going to have to come through an NOI. We are happy to work with you. We're not going to ask you to do anything beyond what is required out of an NOI. Again, we understand the work you're trying to do and we're in favor of it. We just have to follow the processes that we have to follow. So,
and I don't think the outcome of what we're going to ask you to do and how we're going to condition it is going to be much different in the end. And the fact that the alternatives analysis, I think, is fairly easily done.
Agreed.
In terms of what's there, and the fact that this plan probably meets that alternatives analysis. I can envision how to do that myself. So it's not going to be a big difference in that, except we have to be able to have something that's a defendable process. You don't want it to get upended in some other way either. So, but whatever.
Okay.
So I don't think it's going to be in the end very different.
Right, right, that's true.
And so you could listen to your own consultant to say that it's not very different. And it's just a matter of making
Most of-
sure we
most of the
can.
work is done, Dave, it's just putting it together and getting the alternative analysis done, so.
Yep. Okay. So at this point then, do we need to, commission members or Joyce, can you tell me, do we need to make this a motion that it requires an NOI, or can we just give that feedback and move on?
So Karen, you probably know, I think we make a determination that this requires a notice of intent. And
I
so
think you should make a motion, yeah.
Okay.
we'll do a
All right.
determination of applicability.
Okay. So I move that that we've, as a part of determination of applicability, that this requires an NOI. It's in riverfront area, so it'll require the alternatives analysis and the other things we talked about.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Thank you. Discussion, Michael?
I just want to ask Karen and even Joyce, would the alternative of withdrawing the RDA make it any easier or harder to go through the next steps? Just trying to make sure that whatever
No.
makes it easier to get
No.
through this whole DEP NOI thing, whether it helps to have an RDA in place or not.
No, it's already been filed and advertised. so we'll
Okay,
just
fine.
issue it.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Let's try to find what might be easiest, best.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, Neil, aye. Michael?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
And is Courtney still here? I don't think she is. Okay, 4-0, the motion carries.
Thank
Okay,
you
we'll-
all.
Thank you so much. All right. We've got about 9 minutes before the COC for 121 Woodland. Do we have anybody who's on the meeting for that?
That's me.
Oh, okay.
Do we have to stick to a schedule on a COC?
That's
No,
what I'm
it's
wondering.
not advertised. You can do
Okay.
it.
All right, so why don't we take care of it now?
Okay, so Karen Skinnicatroni, again, representing the previous owner, actually, of the property at 101 Woodland Road. So we don't have the bounds in yet, and there's a lot of question about what we should put in, and nobody seems to know exactly what we need to put in. So we thought we have everything else done. We have a letter from the owner. We have the new owner. We have all the paperwork submitted, the plans in. It's just bounds. In Westwood, we use a granite mound with a plaque on top, but I'm kind of being told a sign. I'm not clear on it, and we're more than happy to do it. And I actually was wondering if the commission would approve this contingent on the bounds being put in. Joyce can hold the certificate of compliance until that's done, because as soon as you tell me what to do tonight, it's going to get done.
So we do have a detail for the monuments that has been circulated, and that's with the concrete bounds with the plaque on top, similar to Karen, to I think what you do in Westwood. And the
So I
language-
haven't seen that. Has Eric seen that? Because Eric still seems a bit confused about what you're looking for.
So I think, well, we sent it out to you all for 34 South Main, that same monument detail, but I can send it on to you.
Absolutely, yeah. As soon as I get it, we'll get that done.
Okay, because it's the same idea as what you do in Westwood.
Oh, okay, because somebody said, I think Eric was suggesting that one property he did wooden posts, and that just doesn't seem right to me.
Correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, so if you can send that to me tomorrow, we'll have it done as soon as possible. And I didn't know if the commission could vote to approve, and then Joyce can hold that COC until she approves of the bounds.
I don't see why not. We could make it contingent. It's not, it's not really a judgment thing. That it's just, I don't see an issue. Does anybody else have any issue with
Fine
that?
with a contingent motion.
Yeah. Okay. In that case, I move that we approve this certificate of compliance contingent on the boundaries getting put in and approved by Joyce or confirmed by Joyce.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
I do have a question. I have a question.
Sure.
So I know Karen is saying that she'll get it done right away, or, figured out right away or whatever. And then, so that actually does not get released from Joyce until those are,
Right.
those
Until
are
she-
in the ground.
Until she approves it.
Okay.
Well, basically, Elizabeth will hang on to it until
Yeah.
until I go out and look at it, and once Karen calls and I go out and look at it, it will be done.
Great.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? I lost Michael. Let's see. Oh, there he comes. All right. All right. All those in favor, Neil, aye. Michael, unmute yourself.
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
All right. The motion carries.
Great. And Joyce, if you could email that to me, that would be appreciated. The detail.
I'm going to send it out to you right now.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too, Karen. Thank you. All right. Let's see. We are at 10:10 p.m. Great. All right. So we've got, well, we have the Don Pond discussion as well. That's also, I mean, it's on at 10:30, but I at least see Mr. Cooperman, and it looks like I might have Mr. Dodd as well. Let's see. I don't think there's any issue with having the discussion now. Mark, Mr. Cooperman, are you prepared to talk now?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. We're good to go if you guys are administratively okay with it.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine. The only thing I was gonna just sort of as a preamble to this is just to kind of frame why you're before us and the sort of the constraints that as a commission we're gonna kind of follow. Because I've communicated this to Mr. Cooperman, but I've had a couple of conversations with town council about what exactly is being presented tonight. So what's being presented tonight is information that about sort of current and or ongoing impacts to the Dodd property and the wetlands there. This is not a comment on any sort of an open matter. There's no hearing with respect to Silverwood. There is an ongoing process that the town is undergoing to survey and look at stormwater and hydrology just in the area that encompasses the Dodd property. But this is just being brought to us, in a way as a potential violation or a potential that's going to require enforcement. We don't know because we haven't seen what they're going to present, but that's just how it's being presented to us, and we have to sort of make a determination as to how we want to follow up on that. And again, I've gotten some guidance from town council on this because of the fact that there are multiple stakeholders with various perspectives and so on that as a commission we need to just kind of be careful about. Carol, yes.
Just a quick question about starting discussion now. Would it be better to wait till 10:30 in case someone representing Silverwood Farm was planning to join at that point?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I see DeShang here, but I'm not sure who he's here to represent.
Yeah, that's a good point. We didn't, because it's coming before us as just providing of information, some concerns being expressed, but it's not specifically about Silverwood or any other property. It's just what's going on the Dodd property. But maybe in the interest of being cautious, maybe you're right, Carol. Maybe we should just leave it till 10:30. Let's just do that. I think that's a good idea. Sorry, Mark, but
that's
we're
okay.
gonna. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's 15.
Here can you ask DeShang whether?
Well, I don't want to in case there's somebody else besides DeShang. So let's just exercise caution. Thank you for that, Carol. I think it's a good idea. All right, so we'll leave it till 10:30. Let's try to take care of all of our other business between now and then. We've got about 16 minutes here. So, okay. So I updated you on the agent. We did the minutes, legal implications of discussion language. I'm gonna just kick to another meeting. I don't think it's anything unless somebody wants to discuss it that we need to talk about tonight. The poetry reading we can also forego. There are, let's see, some site issues, questions around 133 Nason Hill. Is that something, I hope we didn't lose Joyce because she was waiting, but I don't know if that's something anybody's aware of, what that is.
I'm not.
Elizabeth, do you know anything about it?
I do. Let me pull up my email.
Oh, here comes Joyce.
Right back. Oh, good.
I'm sorry, I couldn't turn my computer back on. Could you please repeat the question?
133 Nason Hill Road is listed under site issues or questions, and we're just wondering what that might be.
That was they have a determination of applicability. And they are looking to repave their driveway. So what I was looking to do is to do a minor modification to the determination of applicability to include an erosion control around the driveway end, because the driveway slopes down towards the wetland, and so that they can pave their driveway. A portion of the end is in the 100-foot buffer zone. So rather than having them refile, I would just amend the determination to include paving the driveway.
Sorry, I'm confused.
This was a carport that was attached to the rear of the existing house. If you recall, it was on existing.
I do recall it, yeah.
And so a portion of that carport was in the 100-foot buffer zone between the house and the driveway. The end of the driveway lines up with the carport. So they called up and said, they called Elizabeth and said they wanted to extend their, they wanted to do some more work and wanted to be sure that it was not going to be a violation. So I suggested that we bring it up as a discussion and that we amend their existing determination to add erosion control along the end of the driveway so that they could pave it.
So so part of the paving is occurring within jurisdiction.
The end of the driveway touches is in the 100-foot buffer zone.
And are we talking about, like, square footage wise, what are we talking about?
Maybe 10 feet.
Oh,
or so.
like,
And then there's an expanse of lawn before it drops down and gets towards the wetland.
sorry, go ahead.
So it's not, I believe that they can do this without any issues, but I would like to see the addition of straw wattles at the end.
Okay. What do people think?
I mean, I understand what Joyce is saying, because I remember this property when we heard it. And so as she's talking about it, I just have created a whole vision in my mind of what it all looked like and where the straw wattles will go. You know, I understand what Joyce is trying to do. She just wants to protect the, any erosion from going down into the wetland area. And I mean, it seems fine to me. I mean, it's going to have to go across an expanse of lawn too before it gets to the jurisdictional area. Right, Joyce? Am I right on that?
You're correct.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like there's not a whole lot of square footage there that's impacted. And it's not that they want to actually increase their driveway, right? They're just looking to pave over what exists.
Correct. They'll probably take up the existing pavement, and I would add the conditions to that there, again, no stockpiling, no debris, and it all gets removed from site. Or out of the 100-foot buffer zone, basically.
Right. I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
I think it's fine. Anybody else?
I'm okay.
Sounds straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's a really small area and you're just adding some protective measures, and I think it's fine to just amend it. Okay. We don't need a motion on that, do we?
If it would be helpful if you would just recognize it as a minor modification.
Sure. So I move that we recognize the addition, that the small portion that's in the buffer that's going to be repaved with the addition of erosion control as a minor modification on this determination of applicability.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, Neil? Aye. Michael?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. Okay. we still have about 10 minutes before this Dodd Pond discussion.
How about the administrative approvals?
Yeah, I was going to say, Joyce, do you want to run us through those real quick? You're muted.
I don't have the agenda. I've lost my agenda.
Oh, I can tell you what they are and then you can tell. So there's 38 Page Farm Road shed construction.
Yeah, there was a shed that they moved. They originally filed to build it in the buffer zone, then moved it to the edge of the driveway, and so it was approved.
Okay. 11 Ames Drive, a replacement well.
Yeah, that's outside the buffer zone.
Okay. 176 Western Screen Porch Addition.
Again, outside the buffer zone.
Okay. 55 Farm Road. Oh, this is the septic system. That's gone. That's withdrawn. 41 Perry Street soil testing.
Approved, outside the buffer zone.
Okay. And then 101 Woodland Street for soil testing.
Same, approved.
Okay. All right. Well, we
Just a
still
quick
have.
question. Joyce, what did you say about 38 Page Farm Road? What did you say?
They relocated their proposed shed to be at the end of the driveway outside the buffer zone.
Oh, outside. Okay. Thanks.
Right. Right. They had come before us and they were proposing to have it in the buffer zone. They decided to move it out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we still have about 9 minutes before the Dodd Pond discussion. Is there anything else?
You know what? There was one more, by the way. 101 Woodland Street soil testing. Did you get that one?
We did.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know why I missed it.
It's okay. Well, there's nothing else we can talk about on our agenda, but we want to wait till 10:30. So let's wait till 10:30.
We could take a, few minutes break. We haven't had a break all evening.
Let's do it. All right. So we'll be back in 8 or 9 minutes.
Thank you.
Calling all commissioners. If you're listening.
I'm back.
Thank you, Cindy.
I'm back too.
Great, and there's Michael. Okay. All right, Mr. Cooperman, you wanted to come and talk to us about what's been going on at Dodd Pond or the Dodd property.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. If I may, and Fred is joining us this evening also. He should be on.
Great.
So what I'd like to do is, as you said, I understand, we'd like to talk about some ongoing issues. However, I'd like to put everything into some context with where we're at. We are an entire season ahead, again, without any remediation because of the circumstances at hand. We understand the town has engaged AECOM on behalf of Mr. Walker's request to conduct a broader scale watershed, quote unquote, analysis. While we understand, I understand, and I've explained to my client, to Fred, the purpose of that, we have substantial concerns given what's been continuing to go on with how that portrays the actions of what had happened previously that led to the issues affecting Dodd Pond. That being said, fast forward, we went through this process with you guys, and the bulk and substance of the enforcement in NOI was really to implement stormwater control structures, for lack of better terms, right? That, some of those, to our understanding, is done. We haven't been on the property, so we assume that to some extent they're done. I do have some questions about some of the orders of conditions. However, as submitted, as evidenced by the submissions provided to Elizabeth several weeks ago, during just two examples of events, both on July 9th and I think September 12th it was, of 2021, you can see that we are still, or Fred is still incurring substantial discharges of sediment coming from upstream from Silverwood. These are not, nor have they ever been in 35 years, observable through town-wide water management structures, whether they be, obviously they wouldn't be coming from the Route 16 side, but let's say the Western Ave side or Dopping Brook, for example, never been observed until the violations that took place from the excavation work at Silverwood. So we obviously are extremely disappointed and frustrated with the fact that here we are, another entire growing season, and we do not have remediation. Very, I might remind everyone, extremely generous remediation on behalf of Fred to Silverwood to resolve the matter for everyone's sake, against, quite frankly, against my recommendation as his consultant, and that it was a very, very discounted number to get us to where we needed to get to. But we talked about this, Michael, I think you remember, we talked about let's try what we have and see if we can get somewhere. So fine. And now we don't have that because the other party in agreement has decided to pursue a town-wide watershed analysis, which, again, in my opinion, for the record, has nothing to do with what we're discussing here. Of course, the town's infrastructure may or may not demonstrate some contributory component to this fairly large private pond. However, it's been doing it for 35 years, and we never had the punctuated events that we had, coincidentally, the moment an excavator went through the channel at Silverwood. So I think we came to that conclusion, right? No, I don't think anybody's disputing that. We came to that conclusion that there were impacts, and that is why you folks mandated that some remediation be in order. We got there. We've had it taken away now, and now we're focused. The sort of bullseye has moved to a town-wide watershed analysis, which we're not going to accept as as being directly related to what happened at Silverwood. Okay. That being said, the real, as Mr. Chairman had hoped to point out, on top of all this, we are still incurring substantial discharges during what I would call moderate storm events. So I went back and I checked some of the weather data for those 2 dates, for example, and they're both 1 inch or less, maybe in a shorter duration, but they're not. It's not like these need to be 3 to 4 inch storms for this to occur. These have to occur. It's probably temporal in its nature, but 1 inch or less seems to be a catalyst. We are wondering, and I am wondering in particular, looking back at the very, very detailed order of conditions issued to Silverwood, and in particular, both the typical general conditions for maintenance and operation logs of stormwater structures, whether or not Silverwood is allowing members of the commission to enter the property to look at these BMPs as the order instructs. And also, from the findings under the Sherborn's wetlands bylaw, one of the key points was this mitigation will only work with a critical monitoring plan, and the monitoring plan will ensure the plans achieve the goals that the Concom may deem additional measures required. Further, under the special conditions, in particular starting with 16, which seems to be the most relevant, there shall be no sediment deposition from the farmed portions of Silverwood into down gradient resource areas, period. And if sediment from non-jurisdictional areas of the site are released, they will be the subject of enforcement. 17, special condition 17. So I'd have to say that is what we are incurring right now, or continuing, flat out continuing. We have all along. We're continuing to incur sediment from non-jurisdictional areas that are released into downstream resource areas through waters of the U.S. This is an unallowable discharge that we don't have remediation for, that we very generously tried to resolve and got usurped by the other party. The special conditions further, my understanding is I've been approached by some of the members on Dopping Brook, not formally, I should note for the record, I'm not formally working with them yet, but given the attenuation issues, velocity issues, special conditions called for staff gauge installation to determine compliance with special condition 16 with regard to peak flows. In addition to special conditions 32 and on for nutrient level monitoring. Have any of these reports or inspections during peak storm events per the order of conditions, have any of these been provided to the commission by Silverwood's consultants?
So Mark, let me try to address this sort of first at a global level, because I think, in my conversation with town council, I was given the guidance that we did not want to, as a commission, we should not get into the specifics of Silverwood, of the order of conditions, and it's not because we're trying to obstruct what you're saying. It was more that you would come to us tonight with what was happening on your property currently. I actually, it's a sort of an open question in my mind when you're talking about it as to whether or not the order of conditions is even in force. It's something that I have to go back and check with town council on, because that's really their sort of purview and not ours. Obviously, we issued an order of conditions, and as you've pointed out, some of the elements in there that you feel are not being abided by. But I don't think we can comment on that at this point, not without town council's presence and or guidance, which I don't have. So what I think really at this point, town council has told me that it is the town's position that the best way for them to address not only the issues you're bringing forth, but just other issues that have been reported by folks on Dopping Brook and elsewhere is that the best first step is to have AECOM come in and do this more sort of macro scale analysis. And I don't even think we're in a position to comment on whether we think that's the good idea or bad idea, but that's just what the town's position has been presented as. And so we're following that. And so I guess what I would say is that I would like to go back, because it is a point of confusion for me, to town council and find out whether or not the OOC, because an OOC has been issued, and if it's not being followed, it just, I want to understand from a legal perspective where we are. So we've issued an order. There's been a complaint filed by the applicant for the NOI about the way the process worked, and whether or not the town had some responsibility. And this is all sort of well-trod ground by all of us. We've all heard sort of how these issues have played out, and I'm telling you that there's been a complaint letter that's public record. That's not a secret or anything. So what I would and part of that complaint alleges that the commission should have handled things differently than they did, and so we've been also offered the guidance to just be conservative in our interactions, and that's what we're going to do. But I think on the front of so in other words, I don't think we can comment on the OOC stuff at this point, but I will say that if you have current and ongoing impacts, those are things that we should come and take a look at on your property, and try to get a better sense, because we have not been out recently to any of the neighboring properties, again, exercising sort of or sort of in line with the guidance we've received from town council. So I think we should have a representative of the commission come out and look. I know AECOM is doing their work, and they've, I don't know which neighbors they visited, and I think that when you and I spoke last, they had not, or you were not aware if they had been out or not, but you were not aware that they had been out. But I think at this point, let me put it this way, I don't think the commission, if you come and say we have an ongoing impact, something current, we can't ignore that, because there's a potential violation, potential subject of enforcement. So what I'd like to do is have a representative of the commission come out and look at it. I know you've submitted some information already, but have a look on the ground, how much more sediment is there, that kind of stuff, to try to get a sense of it. And then I hate to keep saying it, I've got to go back to town council and get their guidance on how to handle it.
No,
I mean, our hands are tied to some degree.
I understand that, and per our conversation, I understand that. Let me simplify, in that I agree it needs to be looked at. The rate of you just brought something up I hadn't gotten to yet, and that is in addition to the documented events and the photos that I've shown you. And let's I guess for this point moving forward, for the sake of simplicity and the fact that your hands are tied to some extent, let's agree that when I'm discussing these discharges, I don't care how they got there. I'm just telling you there's a discharge coming. So whether they're coming from stormwater structures that were supposed to be part of an OOC, that doesn't really matter, because it's a discharge into a water of the US, to a downstream resource, which is not an okay activity, right? So,
Yep.
Well, let's forget about how they happened. We know where they come from. We're going to forget about how they originated. That being said, yes, we're incurring them. We've provided photo documentation. On the more recent point you just made, Mr. Chairman, one thing we are noticing is that the rate of sediment accumulation right there at the bridge is extremely rapid, to the point where I noticed last week when I was on site, I now have smartweed growing on the water. It's not a Polygonaceae, not a wetland plant. So obviously, in order to see it in action, per the photos that we've submitted for the 2 events more recently this summer, you'd have to be out during a storm event to see the silted water coming in. Obviously, we will keep photo documentation because, and they can all be verified, by date if anybody's interested. We'll keep that because it's valuable. In order to see it in action, you'd have to be there during the action with a raincoat and an umbrella some period of time after it starts. But we are very concerned. It's continuing. It's ongoing. There are discharges, period, coming into Dog Pond. And that is not an acceptable activity.
Okay. So, Michael, did you have some comment or question?
Yeah, just that maybe, Mark, you can supplement what, I just see in our records here that's been shared with us with the 4 photos and a video, if it's not already sent in an email somehow, that you document the actual dates and events, what time these things were done, so that we just have it for our record and we can study that a little bit more again. So that, maybe we've done that.
I think so. I believe I had with Elizabeth. I don't know if you're still here. In the email, they were.
I am here, and those videos and photos are in the Dropbox.
Yeah, but I just don't know. I was just curious
they're saved
exactly the dates and stuff.
Oh, I see, Michael. I'm so you're right. They were in the email. They were categorized by date for Elizabeth, but not if you just looked at the photos. You're right. You may not have a title with them.
Okay, as long as there's something there that I could just look at just to correlate with dates and rain event information.
First group was July, first group was July 9th. Second group, I believe, was September 12th.
Okay, well, as long as it's on the record somewhere, so we could go look at some.
Yes, thank you. Those are just a sample of.
Right, and I think in terms of going forward, there's probably 2 things we can do: is have a commission representative come out. You said you've observed some things like smart weed growing and that kind of stuff. So maybe to sort of lay eyes on it, understand it. In the meantime, I can go back to town council about 2 things. One is if we do determine that something is going on and needs to be addressed from a jurisdictional perspective, what we ought to do. And then the other being getting clarification about whether the OOC is in force or not, or how we ought to handle that piece of it. And then the other, I guess, would be, I would like to have somebody observing that's a representative of the commission during a rain event. And I don't know, like maybe Mark, you could sort of let me know. I mean, obviously if it's raining, I will know, but truth be told, I may not sort of think about it. So if there's a significant rain event where you're observing this kind of sort of conditions, if you let me know, I can then sort of either come out myself and look, or have a representative of the commission come out and look. And we can do it that way.
All right, so we'll try and anticipate, obviously based on forecasts, a substantial upcoming, storm event.
Yep.
Reach out, dear Neil, I think we're going to have something Thursday night. We're going to try and watch for it Friday morning, what have you. You're welcome to come by and take a look at Fred's if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do that.
You can let me know too. I'd be interested. And
Yeah.
you don't have to forecast too much because you have a little lag from the peak.
Correct. Yeah, it's not obviously exactly so.
So you don't want to actually go there while it necessarily,
No.
well, it's raining per se, as opposed to after some period.
About an hour, depending on the design storm event, it's about an hour to 3 hours.
Okay. So we'll try to do it, but in the meantime, I think it sounds like you're describing sort of the evidence, even if the storm event isn't actually occurring, of sort of the aftermath of it with sediment and the rest. So we'll definitely get somebody to come out and have a look, and then we'll and like I said, I'm going to seek clarification on a few items because again, I want to be fair to you, but I also want to be fair to the other parties and to what the town council is guiding us to do.
Would you, once you do get clarification, could you just at least provide us with a summary of where you stand with that, so we know if that's open for fair game, the order of conditions, et cetera?
Yes, I will absolutely communicate to you everything that I'm allowed to, that I'm guided to be able to do. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us about this at the moment?
No, I'll keep it at that for now. If that's where we're at. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll communicate about getting out to the site.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Cooperman, I appreciate your coming before us, and we appreciate your concern, and we'll try to do what we can to help.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
All right. I actually think that's it for our agenda, is it not?
Think so.
Yes. Fantastic. All right. I move we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, Neil, aye. Michael?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Neil, when you go talk to, could you get the scope of work for the, for AECom's work?
Sure.
Okay.
I could
And
do
you
that.
can share with people.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I will do it. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you again.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.